Welcome to another exciting episode on Black Magic. Today, we're exploring a captivating tale called What If Gringotts Goblins Found Harry chained in cupboard at age 5 and declared total war on Dumbledore. Before we begin, if you enjoy our content, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps more than you know. And now, the story awaits. Chapter 1, The Audit and the Cupboard. Blood Fong slammed his quill down on the parchment, spattering ink across the meticulously maintained ledger. 3 other goblins at nearby desks looked up sharply, then quickly returned to their work when they caught his scowl. Impossible, he muttered, running a long finger down columns of numbers for the 5th time. Completely impossible. The inheritance audit for Vault 687 showed magical fluctuations that made no sense. The Potter heir's magical signature registered as active, expected for an accidental magic phase at age 5, but the signature pattern indicated severe distress. Sustained distress. The kind of pattern they usually saw in prisoners or victims of ongoing abuse. He jabbed his finger at another anomaly. The location tracker tied to the heir's magical signature showed him at a Muggle residence in Surrey, not the ministry-approved Wizarding Guardian household listed in the official records. Blood Fong didn't like discrepancies. Discrepancies meant paperwork. Paperwork meant meetings. Meetings meant politics. And politics meant dealing with wizards, which no self-respecting goblin would voluntarily choose. But rules were rules, especially when it came to ancient and noble houses. And the Potter accounts were too valuable to ignore irregularities. With a heavy sigh that showed more teeth than necessary, Blood Fong gathered his papers and headed toward Senior Manager Griphook's office. Number 4, Privet Drive looked exactly like every other house on the street, neat lawn, tidy flower beds, and curtains that twitched at the slightest disruption to suburban normalcy. The 3 goblins standing on the sidewalk, dressed in impeccable Muggle business attire, definitely counted as a disruption. "This is highly irregular," Griphook said, straightening his tie. At 5 feet tall, he towered over his companions. "We should have involved the ministry." "The ministry put him here," Blood Fong countered. "The same ministry that listed Albus Dumbledore as his magical guardian in our records, yet the boy clearly lives with these muggles." The 3rd goblin, Nagnok from Legal Affairs, nodded. "We have every right to conduct an in-person audit when finances and magical signatures show discrepancies. The Treaty of 1437 explicitly states, 'Spare me the legal lecture,'" Griphook snapped. "Let's verify the situation and leave. I have actual banking to manage." They approached the door, and Blood Fong pressed the bell. Quick footsteps approached, and the door swung open to reveal a horse-faced woman whose expression soured instantly upon seeing them. "We don't buy anything door to door," she said, already closing the door. Griphook wedged his foot in the gap. "Mrs. Petunia Desley? We're here regarding your nephew, Harry Potter." Her face went from sour to pale in an instant. "There's no one by that name here." The lie detector enchantment on Griphook's watch immediately turned red. He exchanged glances with his colleagues. "We have legal documentation proving otherwise," Nagnok said, producing an official-looking folder. "We represent Gringotts Bank regarding Mr. Potter's inheritance matters and require an immediate audit of his living conditions." "My husband will be home soon," she threatened weakly. Blood Fong smiled, showing far too many teeth. "Excellent. We can discuss the tax implications of the stipend you've been receiving for the boy's care. I'm sure your husband would be interested in where that money has gone, considering." He trailed off, gesturing subtly at Petunia's expensive watch and the new television visible through the window. The implication hung in the air like a bad smell. Petunia's resistance crumbled. "Fine. 5 minutes. The boy's doing chores." The goblins entered the immaculate house, immediately noticing the walls adorned with pictures of a pudgy blonde child. No sign of a second boy anywhere. "Where is Mr. Potter?" Griphook demanded. "Cleaning," Petunia said vaguely, wringing her hands. Blood Fong activated the magical signature tracker disguised as a pocket watch. It pointed downward, not toward the kitchen where cleaning sounds might be expected. Downstairs? He asked, confused. The cupboard, Nagnok muttered, his enhanced senses picking up movement beneath the staircase. All three goblins turned to stare at the small door built into the side of the staircase, then at Petunia, whose face had gone from white to gray. "Open it," Griphook ordered. "Now see here," she began, but faltered when Nagnok withdrew what appeared to be a pen but was actually a disguised wand. "Open the cupboard." Each word dropped like a stone. With trembling hands, Petunia unlocked the small door. The smell hit them first, a mixture of cleaning products, urine, and fear. Then they saw him, a tiny, rail-thin boy with untidy black hair, taped glasses, and startling green eyes. Most disturbing of all was the thin chain connecting his ankle to a bolt in the wall. "Aunt Petunia," the boy asked uncertainly. "Did I do something wrong again?" The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 20 degrees as the three goblins processed what they were seeing. Ancient magic stirred, goblin magic tied to oaths, blood, and justice. "No, Mr. Potter," Griphook said with surprising gentleness. "You've done nothing wrong. We're here to help you." Bloodfong was already documenting everything with a magical camera disguised as a mobile phone, while Nagnok had pulled out actual legal documents. "Harry Potter," Nagnok said formally, as the hereditary account manager for the Potter estate, "Gringotts is invoking protective custody under the magical child protection clauses of the Treaty of 1437. The boy just looked confused. "Sir? I don't understand." "He doesn't know," Bloodfong hissed. "He knows nothing." Petunia backed away. "Dumbledore said we just had to keep him. He didn't say anything about people like you coming here." "Vernon will, silence." Griphook's voice cut through her protests. "Your treatment of this child constitutes criminal neglect and abuse under both Muggle and magical law. As magical beings responsible for his inheritance, we have the authority to remove him from your custody immediately." "What about him?" Harry asked, pointing to the chain on his ankle. Griphook snapped his fingers, and the chain dissolved into dust. "You won't need that anymore, Mr. Potter. Would you like to leave this place?" Harry's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and suspicion born from years of false promises. "Forever." "Forever," Griphook confirmed. The boy stood shakily, revealing just how small he was for a 5-year-old. His clothes, clearly hand-me-downs, hung off his frame like sails on a becalmed ship. "Pack your things," Nagnok instructed. Harry gestured to the cupboard. "This is all I have. Just my soldiers." He reached for a small bag containing broken plastic army men. Bloodfong made a noise that caused Petunia to flinch. "We'll get you proper belongings, Mr. Potter." "What's happening to Aunt Petunia?" Harry asked. The goblins exchanged looks. "Justice," Nagnok said simply. Harry had never been in a car like this before, black, sleek, with seats that felt softer than any bed he'd ever known. The three strange men, he wasn't sure what they were exactly, but they definitely weren't like Uncle Vernon, sat with him in the back while someone else drove. "Are you taking me to an orphanage?" he finally asked. Griphook looked startled. "No, Mr. Potter. We're taking you to Gringotts." "What's Gringotts?" The question seemed to physically pain them. "Gringotts is the wizarding bank," Bloodfong explained. "Where we work." Harry's eyes grew wide. "Wizarding? Like, magic? You didn't know?" Nagnok leaned forward. "About magic? About being a wizard yourself?" Harry shook his head vigorously. "Uncle Vernon says magic isn't real. I got in trouble last week because I said my hair grew back by magic after Aunt Petunia cut it." The temperature in the car seemed to drop again. "Your hair grew back overnight?" Griphook asked carefully. Harry nodded. "That's why they—" He trailed off, looking at his ankles. "That was accidental magic," Griphook explained. Completely normal for young wizards. You're quite powerful to manage something so complex. I'm a wizard. Harry whispered the words like they might shatter if spoken too loudly. Yes, Mr. Potter. A wizard from a very old, very respected wizarding family. Your parents were a witch and wizard too. Harry's face fell. Aunt Petunia said they died in a car crash. Because my dad was drunk. The three goblins exchanged dark looks. That is not true, Griphook said firmly. Your parents were murdered protecting you from a very dark wizard. They were heroes in our world. Harry's eyes filled with tears. They weren't drunks. Your father was Lord James Potter, from an ancient and noble house. Your mother was Lily Evans Potter, one of the brightest witches of her generation. They died fighting to keep you safe. The car pulled to a stop in front of what appeared to be an abandoned storefront. Harry wiped his eyes and peered out the window. This doesn't look like a bank, he said doubtfully. Wizarding locations are hidden from muggles, non-magical people, Blood Fong explained. This is just the entrance. They exited the car and approached the dilapidated building. Griphook placed his hand on the door, which shimmered and transformed into an ornate entrance. Harry gasped as they stepped through into a marble hall larger than his entire neighborhood. Goblins of all sizes hurried about, carrying ledgers, gems, and strange instruments. The ceiling soared overhead, decorated with crystal chandeliers and moving paintings. Harry stumbled, trying to take everything in at once. Welcome to Gringotts, Mr. Potter, Griphook said with unexpected pride. Several goblins stopped to stare as they passed. Whispers followed them down the hallway. Is that Harry Potter? Why is he so small? Look at those clothes. Where did they find him? Harry shrank closer to Griphook, who placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't mind them. We don't often bring wizarding children into the bank's private areas. They arrived at a large door marked Ragnarok, Director, in gold lettering. Griphook knocked twice. Enter, commanded a deep voice. The office inside was spectacular, walls lined with weapons and treasures, a massive desk carved from a single piece of black stone, and behind it, the largest goblin Harry had ever seen. Admittedly, his experience was limited to the three who had rescued him. Director, Griphook bowed. We've brought Harry Potter as instructed after confirming the audit discrepancies. Ragnarok's sharp eyes fixed on Harry, who resisted the urge to hide behind Griphook. Mr. Potter, the director said, rising from his chair. I apologize for the circumstances of our meeting. It's okay, sir, Harry replied automatically. Thank you for getting me away from my cupboard. The simple statement hit like a physical blow. Ragnarok's face darkened. Cupboard? Griphook handed over Bloodfang's camera. The Potter heir was being kept in a cupboard under the stairs, chained, director. The Muggles admitted Dumbledore placed him there. They've been receiving a stipend for his care while clearly neglecting and abusing him. He knows nothing of magic, his heritage, or his parents' true fate. Ragnarok reviewed the photos, each swipe of his finger more forceful than the last. Finally, he set the camera down with deliberate control. Mr. Potter, he said formally. Would you permit our healers to examine you? We need to understand what's been done so we can help you properly. Harry hesitated. Will it hurt? No, Ragnarok promised. And you can stop at any time. After a moment's consideration, Harry nodded. Ragnarok pressed a crystal on his desk. Send healer Thornfoot immediately. While they waited, Ragnarok studied Harry with calculating eyes. Do you know who placed you with those muggles, Mr. Potter? Harry shook his head. A wizard named Albus Dumbledore. He's the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and he named himself your magical guardian after your parents died. So he's my guardian. Will I have to go live with him now? Harry asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. Ragnarok's smile showed too many pointed teeth. Absolutely not. By placing you in an abusive home and failing to monitor your well-being, he has violated magical guardianship laws. Gringotts has invoked protective custody. A knock interrupted them, and a female goblin entered carrying what looked like a doctor's bag. "This is Healer Thornfoot," Ragnarok introduced. "She'll examine you if that's still acceptable." Harry nodded nervously. "Everyone out," the healer ordered briskly. "Except the director, if Mr. Potter wishes him to stay." Harry looked at Griphook, who had been his main source of comfort so far. "Can Mr. Griphook stay instead?" If Ragnarok was offended, he didn't show it. "An excellent choice. Griphook, remain with Mr. Potter. The rest of us will begin the response protocols." As the others filed out, Healer Thornfoot set her bag on a small table. "I'm going to use magic to check your health, Mr. Potter. You'll feel a warm tingling sensation, but no pain. Is that all right?" Harry nodded, watching with wide eyes as she withdrew a crystal wand. "Remarkable," she muttered as she waved it over him. "How old are you, Mr. Potter?" "5, ma'am. Almost 6 in July." She frowned. "You're severely undernourished. The size of a 3-year-old. Multiple improperly healed fractures." Her voice hardened. "Evidence of systematic neglect and physical abuse." Griphook's knuckles whitened where he gripped his chair. "Can you fix him?" he asked. "Much of it, yes," she replied. "Proper nutrition, bone-strengthening potions, healing spells for the soft tissue damage." She looked directly at Harry. "You'll need to take medicines and eat special foods, but you'll grow stronger and healthier. You'll even grow taller." Harry's eyes lit up. "Really? I'm not just meant to be small." "No, Mr. Potter. You should be much bigger. And you will be, with proper care." "What about his eyes?" Griphook asked, gesturing to Harry's taped glasses. "Those aren't even the right prescription," she scoffed. "We'll correct his vision properly." She turned back to Harry. "Would you like to be able to see without glasses?" Harry nodded enthusiastically. "We'll begin treatment immediately," she said, packing up her equipment. "I'll prepare a healing chamber and nutrition plan." After she left, Griphook studied Harry's thoughtful expression. "You're taking this very well, Mr. Potter." Harry shrugged. "Weird things always happen around me. This is the first time the weird things have been nice." He hesitated. "What happens now? Where will I live?" "For now, here at Gringotts. We have comfortable quarters for important clients and staff." "But I'm just Harry." Griphook shook his head. "You are the last Potter, heir to an ancient and noble house, and a child who has been greatly wronged. That makes you very important indeed." The door opened, and Ragnarok returned, accompanied by several goblins in formal attire. "The Goblin High Council has convened an emergency session," he announced. "The evidence of Albus Dumbledore's negligence and complicity in your abuse is overwhelming." "What does that mean?" Harry asked. Ragnarok's expression was grim and satisfied all at once. "It means, Mr. Potter, that the Goblin Nation has just declared a state of war against Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore was enjoying a particularly excellent lemon drop when the wards around Hogwarts trembled. Not in alarm, they weren't under attack, but in notification. Someone or something was approaching that the castle itself deemed important enough to alert the headmaster." He rose from his desk and moved to the window. A contingent of goblins, at least 12, marched up the path from Hogsmeade, their armor glinting in the afternoon sun. Leading them was Ragnarok himself, whom Dumbledore recognized from various Wizengamot functions. "Most unusual," he murmured. Fawkes trilled in agreement from his perch. 10 minutes later, Minerva McGonagall's Patronus streaked into his office. "Albus, there's a formal goblin delegation demanding to see you immediately. They say it's about Harry Potter." "Harry?" A chill ran down Dumbledore's spine. He'd placed monitoring charms on Privet Drive, of course, but they only detected major magical events or life-threatening situations. Had something happened? When he reached the entrance hall, he found his deputy headmistress keeping the goblin delegation at bay, her Scottish brogue more pronounced with stress. "I assure you, Headmaster Dumbledore will be here momentarily." "Ah, here he is now." Dumbledore swept forward, projecting calm confidence. "Director Ragnarok, what an unexpected pleasure. What brings Gringotts to Hogwarts on this fine day?" Ragnarok's face remained impassive. "Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, I come before you in formal capacity as Director of Gringotts and Speaker for the Goblin Nation." The ritualistic greeting set alarm bells ringing in Dumbledore's mind. This was no casual visit. "I recognize your authority and welcome you in peace," he replied, completing the formal exchange. "Peace is not what I bring," Ragnarok stated flatly. He withdrew an ornate scroll sealed with the Gringotts crest. "By unanimous vote of the Goblin High Council, I deliver formal notice that the Goblin Nation has declared a state of war against you personally, Albus Dumbledore." The entrance hall fell silent. McGonagall gasped. Several students who had been passing through froze in place. "Surely there's been some misunderstanding," Dumbledore said carefully, making no move to take the scroll. "The Goblin Nation hasn't declared war on a wizard since 1612. There is no misunderstanding. Gringotts conducted an audit of the Potter accounts this morning and discovered serious irregularities. Upon investigating, we found Harry Potter, age 5, chained in a cupboard at his Muggle relative's home." Dumbledore's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. I placed monitoring charms, your monitoring was clearly inadequate," Ragnarok cut him off. "The boy was malnourished, abused, and completely ignorant of magic, his heritage, and his parents' true fate. As magical guardian, you failed in your most basic duties of care. As the authority who placed him there, you are directly complicit in his abuse." "I had no idea," Dumbledore protested. "Petunia Dursley is his blood relative." "The blood wards are meaningless when the blood relative is the abuser." Ragnarok's voice echoed through the hall. "Gringotts has invoked protective custody of Harry Potter under the Treaty of 1437. McGonagall turned on Dumbledore, her face white with fury. "I told you they were the worst sort of muggles. I watched them all day before we left Harry there." Whispers erupted among the gathering crowd of students and staff. Harry Potter. The boy who lived. Abused by muggles. Dumbledore put him there. "This is a matter best discussed privately," Dumbledore said, keenly aware of the growing audience. "No," Ragnarok replied. "Your secrecy allowed this situation to fester. The Goblin Declaration of War is public, as is our custodianship of Harry Potter. You cannot possibly expect to raise a wizard child, we expect to provide what you failed to, safety, care, and respect for his heritage," Ragnarok countered. "The Declaration of War permits us to freeze all of your assets held at Gringotts. It grants us authority to audit any account you've influenced, including the Hogwarts accounts and Potter estate. It revokes your access to Gringotts premises." Dumbledore's mind raced. This was catastrophic, not just personally, but for his plans regarding Harry and Voldemort's eventual return. "Where is Harry now?" he asked. "Safe," Ragnarok answered. "Under healing protocols to address the damage done during his time with the Guardians you selected." "I must see him, you have no authority over Harry Potter any longer," Ragnarok stated. "Your guardianship has been revoked. The relevant documentation has been filed with the Ministry of Magic." "On what grounds?" Dumbledore demanded. "Gross negligence, child endangerment, and failure to follow the Potter's will." Dumbledore stiffened. "The will was sealed by the Wisengamot." "Not from Gringotts, as executor," Ragnarok replied with a predatory smile. "The will explicitly stated that Harry was never to be placed with Petunia Dursley under any circumstances. A copy has been unsealed and filed with the Department of Magical Law Enforcement." McGonagall looked ready to transform into her cat form and claw Dumbledore's eyes out. You knew. You knew they didn't want him placed there and you did it anyway. It was necessary for his protection, Dumbledore insisted. The Blood Wards failed to protect him from those inside them, Ragnarok finished. Your war is not just with the Goblin Nation, Dumbledore. When this becomes public, you'll face the wrath of the wizarding world as well. He tossed the scroll at Dumbledore's feet. Formal notification has been delivered. We depart in peace, though we leave none behind. The Goblin delegation turned as one and marched out of the castle, leaving stunned silence in their wake. McGonagall broke it first. Albus, what have you done? Harry woke in a room unlike any he'd ever seen. The ceiling sparkled with tiny lights like stars, and the bed beneath him felt like floating on a cloud. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming, until he remembered the goblins, the bank, and the healer. He sat up, noticing he wore soft pajamas instead of Dudley's hand-me-downs. His body felt strange, not exactly painful, but tingling all over. His vision was blurry, but when he reached for his glasses on the bedside table, he found a note instead: "Your eyes are healing. No glasses for 3 days. Ring the bell if you need assistance." A small silver bell sat beside the note. Harry picked it up uncertainly and gave it a gentle ring. Almost immediately, the door opened, and Griphook entered. "Good morning, Mr. Potter. How are you feeling?" "Weird," Harry admitted. "Tingly. And hungry." Griphook nodded approvingly. "The hunger is a good sign. Your body is responding to the healing potions. Healer Thornfoot said you might feel tingling as your bones strengthen." He gestured, and another goblin entered carrying a tray of food, not the meager portions Aunt Petunia allowed him, but a feast of eggs, sausages, fruit, and a steaming mug of something that smelled like chocolate. "All this is for me?" Harry asked in disbelief. "You need to rebuild your strength," Griphook explained. "The potions work better with proper nutrition." As Harry ate ravenously, Griphook watched with satisfaction. "Today we'll begin addressing your education, Mr. Potter. You've missed much about the magical world." "Will I learn magic?" Harry asked eagerly. "Eventually. First, you need to understand your place in our world and the situation you now find yourself in." Harry slowed his eating. "Because of the war thing?" "Yes. The Goblin Nation declaring war on Dumbledore is unprecedented in recent centuries. It's causing quite a stir in the wizarding world already." "Will people be fighting? With weapons and stuff?" Griphook chuckled. "Not that kind of war. This is a financial and political conflict. We've frozen Dumbledore's assets, restricted his access to Gringotts services, and publicized his failures regarding your guardianship." Harry frowned. "So people know about the cupboard?" "Not the details," Griphook assured him. "Just that you were mistreated and that Dumbledore was responsible for placing you there. Your privacy is important to us." "What happens next?" "After breakfast, Director Ragnarok wishes to speak with you about your future." Harry nodded, trying to look brave despite his nervousness. Ragnarok had been intimidating yesterday. An hour later, freshly bathed and dressed in new clothes that actually fit him, Harry was escorted to Ragnarok's office. The director sat behind his massive desk, examining a piece of parchment. "Ah, Mr. Potter. Please, sit." He gestured to a chair that adjusted itself to Harry's height as he climbed into it. "How are your treatments progressing?" "Good, I think. I feel strange but better." "Excellent. Now, we need to discuss your living arrangements and education." Harry tensed. Despite the goblin's kindness, he still expected to be sent away. "Gringotts has invoked an ancient right to provide you sanctuary," Ragnarok explained. "This gives us temporary guardianship while we sort out the legal complications Dumbledore created." "Can I stay here?" Harry asked. Ragnarok looked surprised. "You wish to remain among goblins?" Harry nodded. Everyone's been nice to me here. I have a real bed. And nobody's hit me or called me freak. The director's expression darkened momentarily before he composed himself. You set a very low bar for acceptable treatment, Mr. Potter. Sorry, Harry mumbled. No apologies necessary. If you wish to remain at Gringotts, arrangements can be made. Senior Account Manager Griphook has volunteered to serve as your primary guardian. Harry brightened. Really? Mr. Griphook wants me? Indeed. However, your magical education must still be addressed. While you're too young for a wand, you can begin learning about magical theory, your family history, and goblin magic, which differs from wizard magic. There are different kinds of magic. Ragnock nodded. Many kinds. Wizards rely primarily on wands to channel their magic. Goblins use different methods, metal crafting, rune work, and direct manipulation of magical energies. Harry leaned forward, fascinated. Could I learn goblin magic too? Traditionally, we don't teach goblin magic to wizards, Ragnock said cautiously. But yours is an unprecedented situation. Perhaps some cultural exchange would be beneficial. A knock interrupted them, and Griphook entered with a large file. The initial audit of the Potter accounts is complete, Director, he reported. As suspected, there have been unauthorized withdrawals. Ragnock's expression hardened. By Dumbledore? Some directly, others to fund an organization called the Order of the Phoenix. Additionally, several Potter properties have been sealed or repurposed without approval from the heir or his proper guardian. What's the Order of the Phoenix? Harry asked. A vigilante group Dumbledore formed to fight against the dark wizard who killed your parents, Ragnock explained. While their goals may have been admirable, using your family's money without permission was not. He stole from me. Harry's voice was small. He likely believed he was entitled to use your resources for the greater good, as he often phrases it, Griphook said. We're already in the process of recovering the funds and properties. Including Potter Cottage in Godric's Hollow, Ragnock added. The ministry seized it as a historical site after your parents' murder, but it legally belongs to you. Where my parents died? Harry whispered. Both goblins nodded solemnly. Can I see it someday? When you're ready, Griphook promised. The door burst open, and Bloodfang rushed in, an unusual breach of goblin protocol that spoke to his agitation. Director, news from our sources at the Ministry. Dumbledore has called an emergency session of the Wizengamot regarding our declaration of war and custody of Harry Potter. Ragnock looked unsurprised. As expected. He'll try to use his political influence to force our hand. Should we send representatives? Griphook asked. No. Let him make his case without opposition for now. It will make him overconfident. Ragnock turned to Harry. Mr. Potter, I'm afraid your situation is about to become very public. Wizarding politics can be messy. Harry bit his lip. Will they make me go back? To the Dursleys or to Dumbledore? Absolutely not, all three goblins said in unison with such vehemence that Harry jumped. The Goblin Nation has invoked protective rights, Ragnock continued more calmly. Even the Wizengamot cannot override that without violating the treaties that govern our relationship with the wizarding world. Such a violation would trigger a true goblin rebellion, something no sane wizard wants. Why are you helping me so much? Harry finally asked. The goblins exchanged glances. 3 reasons, Ragnock answered. First, as managers of your family's wealth, we have a duty to protect the last Potter. Second, your mistreatment represents a severe breach of magical tradition and law, which offends our sense of justice. And third. He hesitated. Third. Harry prompted. Your mother, Lily Evans Potter, was one of the few wizards ever to earn goblin respect, Griphook explained gently. She treated us as equals, studied our language, and advocated for creature rights. We honor her memory by protecting her son. Harry's eyes filled with tears. Can you tell me about her? And my dad? Nobody ever has before. We will tell you everything we know, Griphook promised. And help you contact others who knew them better. Sirius Black huddled in the corner of his cell in Azkaban, trying to focus on his innocence to keep the Dementors at bay. The mantra had sustained him for nearly 4 years, not guilty. Peter betrayed them. Protect Harry. Harry. Was he safe? Happy? Did he remember his godfather at all? The sound of approaching footsteps broke through his thoughts, not the gliding of Dementors, but the firm steps of human visitors. Strange. Nobody visited prisoners in Azkaban unless it was officials conducting inspections. 2 Aurors appeared at his cell door, accompanied by a severe-looking witch in legal robes and, most surprisingly, a goblin. Prisoner Black, the witch announced. Stand back from the door. Sirius complied, curious despite his exhaustion. The door opened, and the goblin stepped forward. Sirius Orion Black, I am Nagnok, legal representative of Gringotts Bank. I come with questions regarding Harry James Potter. Harry's name jolted Sirius to full alertness. Harry? Is he okay? Has something happened? The witch raised an eyebrow at his reaction. I'm Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Your concern seems genuine, Black. Of course it's genuine. He's my godson. Sirius rasped, his voice rough from disuse. A godson you betrayed by giving his parents' location to you-know-who, one of the Aurors commented. I never was their secret keeper, Sirius insisted, the familiar protest feeling futile. We switched to Peter Pettigrew at the last minute. He was the traitor. So you've claimed, Bones said noncommittally. Yet you were found at the scene after killing Pettigrew and 12 muggles. I didn't kill anyone. Peter blew up the street, cut off his finger, and escaped in his Ratanimagus form. The goblin, who had been observing silently, spoke. You claim Peter Pettigrew was an unregistered animagus? Yes. As was I, as was James. We learned so we could accompany Remus during full moons. He's a werewolf, Sirius added, past caring about exposing secrets. Bones looked troubled. These claims were not in the trial records. Sirius laughed bitterly. What trial? I never got one. Barty Crouch had me thrown straight in here. A heavy silence fell. Is that true? Bones asked the Aurors. They shrugged. Before our time. Gringotts records confirm no trial transcript exists for Sirius Black, Nagnok stated. We've been reviewing all documentation related to Harry Potter's guardianship. Harry's guardianship? What's happened? Sirius demanded. Nagnok's expression was grim. Harry Potter was discovered chained in a cupboard at his Muggle relative's home yesterday. Gringotts has invoked protective custody. Sirius lunged forward, only to be restrained by the Aurors. What? Who put him there? Where is he now? Is he hurt? Albus Dumbledore placed him there, Nagnok answered calmly. He's currently at Gringotts receiving healing for malnutrition and abuse. The Goblin Nation has declared war on Dumbledore for his negligence. Sirius sagged in the Auror's grip. Harry's been abused. All this time. Mr. Black, Bones said, her voice softer, if you truly are Harry's godfather and were never convicted in a proper trial, your situation demands immediate review. Particularly since the Potter will named you as Harry's guardian in the event of their deaths. The will was read. Sirius asked, surprised. Gringotts unsealed it yesterday, Nagnok confirmed. It explicitly prohibited placement with Petunia Dursley and named you as guardian, with Alice Longbottom as an alternative. Both unavailable, Bones murmured. Frank and Alice after the Lestrange attack, and you in Azkaban without trial. She straightened. This requires immediate action. Black, You're being temporarily transferred to the Ministry holding cells pending investigation of your case. I need Veritaserum, Sirius insisted. Give me Veritaserum and ask me directly, did I betray James and Lily Potter? Bones studied him carefully. That can be arranged. Aurors, prepare the prisoner for transport. Mr. Nagnock, please have Gringotts forward all relevant documentation. As they led him from the cell, Sirius felt hope for the first time in years. Can I see Harry if I'm cleared? He asked Nagnock. That would be for him to decide, the goblin replied. But I believe he would welcome meeting someone who truly cared for him and his parents. 3 days after the Goblin declaration of war, the wizarding world was in an uproar. The Daily Prophet ran sensational headlines: Boy WHO lived rescued from abuse, Dumbledore facing Goblin war, Potter will violated, Sirius Black case reopened, Harry, still safely ensconced in Gringotts, tried to make sense of it all with Griphook's help. Why do they call me the boy who lived? He asked, looking at the newspapers spread across the table. Because you survived the killing curse, Griphook explained. The night your parents died, the dark wizard Voldemort cast a curse at you that had never failed to kill instantly. Yet you survived with only that scar, and Voldemort was destroyed. Harry touched the lightning bolt scar on his forehead. That's from a curse. Yes. Making you famous in the wizarding world as the only person ever to survive that curse, and for apparently defeating the darkest wizard in generations as a mere baby. But I didn't do anything, Harry protested. I don't even remember it. Nevertheless, you're a symbol to many wizards. Which is partly why your situation has created such scandal. A knock at the door interrupted them. Bloodfong entered, looking uncharacteristically pleased. Sirius Black has been cleared of all charges, he announced. Veritaserum testimony confirmed he was not the secret keeper and never served Voldemort. The Wizengamot has ordered reparations for his wrongful imprisonment. Harry's godfather? Griphook clarified. Bloodfong nodded. He's currently recovering at St. Mungo's Hospital but has already petitioned for custody rights. Harry looked uncertain. Will I have to go live with him now? Not immediately, Griphook assured him. He needs time to recover from prison, and you're still under healing protocols. Additionally, the Goblin Nation's protective custody remains in effect. But eventually? Bloodfong considered the question. Legally, as your godfather named in your parents' will, he has the strongest claim to guardianship. However, given the unusual circumstances, alternative arrangements might be considered. Like staying here with you? Harry asked Griphook hopefully. The goblin looked surprisingly touched. That would be unprecedented. But perhaps a joint guardianship could be arranged. There's more news, Bloodfong continued. Dumbledore has been temporarily suspended as Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot pending investigation into his actions regarding Mr. Potter. He remains Hogwarts headmaster, but the Board of Governors has launched its own inquiry. All this because of me? Harry asked, distressed. No, Griphook said firmly. All this because of Dumbledore's actions. You are the victim, not the cause. Director Ragnarok wishes to see you both, Bloodfong added. It seems Sirius Black has requested a meeting with Harry as soon as possible. Harry's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. Someone who had actually known his parents, who had cared enough about him to be named his godfather, wanted to meet him. When? He asked. Tomorrow, if you feel ready, Bloodfong replied. Harry nodded decisively. I'm ready. The next morning found Harry sitting nervously in a Gringotts meeting room, flanked by Griphook and Director Ragnarok. He wore new robes that Griphook had helped him select, and his vision, fully healed now, was clearer than it had ever been with his old glasses. The door opened, and a tall, thin man entered, accompanied by Nagnock. Though still gaunt from his imprisonment, Sirius Black had been cleaned up, his long hair trimmed, and his prison pallor beginning to fade. His eyes, gray and intelligent, fixed immediately on Harry. Harry, he breathed, stopping in his tracks. You look so much like James. Except the eyes. You have my mother's eyes, Harry finished. People keep saying that. Sirius smiled, transforming his haggard face. They're right. He took a tentative step forward. May I? Harry nodded, and Sirius crossed the room to kneel before him, bringing them to eye level. The last time I saw you, you were just learning to ride the toy broomstick I bought you for your first birthday, Sirius said softly. You nearly killed the cat, but your parents thought it was hilarious. I had a toy broomstick? Harry asked, fascinated by this glimpse of his early life. You were a natural flyer, just like your dad. Sirius hesitated, then asked, Can I hug you? It's okay if you'd rather not. After a moment's consideration, Harry nodded. Sirius embraced him gently, and Harry found himself relaxing into the hug. It felt safe in a way he couldn't remember experiencing before. When they separated, both had tears in their eyes. I'm sorry, Harry, Sirius said hoarsely. I should have been there for you. I never should have gone after Peter that night. I should have taken you and kept you safe, like I promised your parents. It's not your fault, Harry said. You didn't know they'd put me with the Dursleys. Actually, Ragnarok interjected, according to the Potter will, Mr. Black did know you were never to be placed with Petunia Dursley. That prohibition was explicit. Sirius nodded grimly. James and Lily knew how Petunia felt about magic. That's why they made it crystal clear in their will that under no circumstances were you to go there. Yet Dumbledore placed him there anyway, Griphook added. Sirius's expression darkened. When I get my hands on him, the Goblin Nation has priority in addressing Dumbledore's transgressions, Ragnarok reminded him. Our declaration of war predates your release. Right, Sirius acknowledged. Speaking of which, I understand I have you to thank for pushing my case forward. The DMLE said Gringotts provided crucial evidence. Ragnarok inclined his head. We were thorough in our investigation of Harry's situation. Your wrongful imprisonment was a related injustice. We're here to discuss Harry's future, Ragnarok steered the conversation back. As his godfather named in his parents' will, you have a legal claim to guardianship. Sirius glanced at Harry, who looked nervous again. I do want to be part of Harry's life, absolutely. But I'm also realistic about my current situation. I've just spent 4 years in Azkaban. I need time to recover, to set up a proper home. He looked at Harry directly. And more importantly, I need to earn your trust. I won't rush that. Harry relaxed visibly. So I can stay at Gringotts for now? If that's what you want, Sirius confirmed. Though I admit, it's an unusual arrangement. Wizards and goblins don't typically live together. Mr. Potter has expressed a desire to learn about both his wizarding heritage and goblin culture, Griphook explained. Given his unique position, Director Ragnarok has approved an extended residency. However, Ragnarok added, we recognize the importance of maintaining ties to his wizarding roots. A joint guardianship might be the optimal solution. Sirius looked intrigued. That's unprecedented, isn't it? A wizard child with both wizard and goblin guardians. Indeed, Ragnarok agreed. But Harry Potter's situation is already unprecedented in many ways. I could visit Sirius sometimes, and stay here other times. Harry asked hopefully. Griphook nodded. With a formal shared guardianship arrangement, you could divide your time between both households. I'd like that, Harry said, looking between Sirius and Griphook. If you both want me. More than anything, Sirius said firmly. Griphook, less demonstrative but no less sincere, nodded. It would be my honor to continue as your guardian, Mr. Potter. Then we have an agreement in principle, Ragnarok concluded. Our legal department will draft the necessary documents for a joint guardianship between Sirius Black and Senior Account Manager Griphook. What about Dumbledore? Sirius asked. He won't give up control easily. The Goblin declaration of war severely limits his options, Ragnarok explained. Additionally, the evidence of his violations of the Potter will has undermined his credibility with the Wisengamot. And the public, Ragnarok added. The Daily Prophet has been relentless in its criticism. Which brings us to another matter, Ragnarok said. The public's interest in Harry's welfare. There will be pressure for public appearances, statements, perhaps even formal interviews. Harry looked alarmed. I don't want to talk to reporters. Nor should you have to, Sirius said protectively. You're 5 years old, for Merlin's sake. Nearly 6, Harry corrected automatically. Sirius smiled. Nearly 6, my apologies. Still too young to be paraded before the press. We concur, Ragnarok said. A simple statement confirming Harry's improved health and secure new guardianship arrangements should suffice for now. The meeting continued, discussing practical details of Harry's continued healing regimen, education plans, and the upcoming legal proceedings. Through it all, Harry found himself relaxing as the adults around him, wizard and goblins alike, demonstrated their commitment to his well-being. For the first time in his young life, Harry Potter felt safe, wanted, and hopeful about his future. 1 week later, Albus Dumbledore stood alone in his office at Hogwarts, watching the sun set over the Forbidden Forest. The garish newspaper headlines on his desk told the story of his spectacular fall from grace. Dumbledore removed A.S. Supreme Mugwump Potter Black Goblin guardianship approved by Wisengamot. War on Dumbledore. Gringotts freezes Hogwarts accounts. The last particularly troubled him. The school's operational funds were now under strict goblin oversight, with every withdrawal scrutinized for necessity and appropriateness. His personal accounts remained completely frozen. A knock at his door interrupted his brooding. Enter, he called. Minerva McGonagall stepped in, her expression as severe as he'd ever seen it. The Board of Governors has concluded its investigation, she announced without preamble. You're being placed on probation as headmaster for 1 year. I'm to serve as acting headmistress during that time. Dumbledore sighed heavily. I expected as much. Did you? McGonagall's voice was sharp. Did you also expect that I would find it difficult to look at you now, Albus? After learning what you did to Lily and James's son? I never intended Harry to suffer, Dumbledore defended wearily. The blood protection from Lily's sacrifice was strongest with her sister. It was meant to keep him safe from Voldemort's followers, while leaving him utterly vulnerable to abuse from within. McGonagall's Scottish brogue intensified with her anger. And don't pretend you didn't know the risk. I told you what they were like. I watched them all day. I had monitoring charms, clearly insufficient ones, she snapped. And even if they had worked properly, you deliberately violated James and Lily's will. You knowingly placed Harry with guardians they had explicitly rejected. You denied Sirius Black a trial that would have exonerated him. I believed Black was guilty, Dumbledore insisted. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Evidence that wouldn't have withstood even basic questioning under Veritaserum, McGonagall countered. A procedure you could have insisted upon as Chief Warlock. Dumbledore had no answer for that. The truly disturbing question, McGonagall continued relentlessly, is why? Why did you insist on controlling Harry's placement so completely that you would violate his parents' wishes? Why deny his godfather a trial? Why never check on his welfare? I did what I thought necessary for the greater good, Dumbledore said softly. The greater good. McGonagall's voice dripped with disdain. How convenient that the greater good always seems to align with your personal plans and authority. She placed a scroll on his desk. The official notice of probation. The board expects your full cooperation with the transition. As she turned to leave, Dumbledore called after her, Minerva, Harry must be protected. Voldemort will return someday. She paused at the door. Perhaps. But Harry Potter is now surrounded by guardians who prioritize his safety and happiness over abstract future threats. The Goblins and Sirius Black have already done more to protect him in 1 week than you managed in 4 years. With that parting shot, she left Dumbledore alone with his regrets and the ruins of his carefully constructed plans. The following day, Harry Potter sat on a cushioned bench in Griphook's quarters at Gringotts, watching in fascination as his goblin guardian demonstrated the basics of metalworking magic. Sirius lounged nearby, equally intrigued by the rare display of goblin magical techniques. "Our magic flows through the metal," Griphook explained, his fingers hovering over a small silver disc. "We shape not just the physical form, but the magical properties within." The disc glowed, then slowly formed itself into an intricate pendant shaped like a lightning bolt. "It matches your scar," Griphook said, presenting it to Harry. "This will serve as a protective amulet. If you're ever in danger, it will alert both myself and Mr. Black immediately." "Wicked," Harry breathed, accepting the pendant. "Will I learn to do magic like that someday?" "Perhaps," Griphook acknowledged. "Though goblin magic and wizard magic differ in methodology, there may be principles you can adapt. Your unique position gives you access to both traditions." Sirius, who had been relatively quiet during the demonstration, leaned forward. "Speaking of traditions, there's something I'd like to discuss with both of you." Harry and Griphook turned their attention to him. "Harry's birthday is coming up in July," Sirius continued. "His 6th birthday. I'd like to host a small celebration at my new house. Nothing overwhelming, just a few people who cared about James and Lily, who want to meet Harry properly." Harry looked nervous but intrigued. "Like who?" "Remus Lupin, for one. He was one of your father's best friends, along with me. Perhaps the Longbottom's son Neville. He was born just a day before you, and you used to play together as babies. His grandmother Augusta might bring him. And maybe the Weasleys. They have a boy about your age named Ron, plus several others." Griphook considered this. A controlled introduction to wizarding society could be beneficial. "Mr. Potter will eventually attend Hogwarts and should begin forming connections. Will you come too?" Harry asked Griphook. The goblin looked surprised. "A goblin at a wizard birthday party? You're my guardian too," Harry said simply. "I want you there." Sirius laughed at Griphook's momentarily speechless expression. "I think that's a brilliant idea. In fact, why not include Director Ragnarok and anyone else from Gringotts who's been helping Harry? Let's make it a proper cross-cultural celebration." "That would be unprecedented," Griphook murmured. "So is a joint goblin-wizard guardianship," Sirius pointed out. "We're already making history. Might as well embrace it." Harry beamed at both of them. "So I can have a real birthday party? With cake and everything?" The naked hope in his voice reminded both guardians of how much normal childhood experiences Harry had been denied. "With cake and presents and games and whatever else you want," Sirius promised. "It'll be the best 6th birthday party in wizarding history." As they continued planning, discussing everything from invitations to menu options that would satisfy both wizard and goblin palates, none of them noticed the small silver pendant glowing faintly against Harry's chest, not in warning, but in response to the genuine happiness radiating from its wearer. In a hidden chamber deep beneath Gringotts, an ancient magical ledger updated itself. A new entry appeared in shimmering ink: Harry James Potter, heir to House Potter, unique status, protected ward of the Goblin Nation, guardian bond established, Sirius Orion Black, wizard, and Griphook, goblin, magical signature, evolving. The last word pulsed once, then settled into the page, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the boy who lived. Chapter 2, Education and Allies. The silver pendant swung from Harry's neck as he raced through the underground corridor, bare feet slapping against smooth stone. Behind him, he heard the frustrated huff of his pursuer. "Too slow, Kill Claw." Harry called over his shoulder. "I win again." The young goblin guard in training growled good-naturedly. "You only win because your legs are getting longer, wizard child." Harry skidded to a halt at the golden line etched into the floor, the finish line for their impromptu race. In the year since the goblins had rescued him from the Dursleys, his body had transformed. No longer the malnourished, frightened 5-year-old, Harry now stood tall for a nearly 7-year-old boy, his limbs strong from daily training in goblin fighting techniques. Excuses, Harry teased, waiting for his friend to catch up. Maybe you need more training. Killclaw flexed his clawed fingers. Maybe you need a reminder of who still wins at wrestling. Not today, Harry laughed. I've got lessons with Director Ragnarok in 10 minutes, and Griphook will kill me if I show up with torn clothes again. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Griphook appeared around the corner, his expression a mixture of resignation and amusement. Mr. Potter, must I remind you that the lower vaults are not a racing track? Harry straightened immediately. No, sir. Sorry, sir. After a year as Harry's guardian, Griphook had mastered the delicate balance of discipline and affection. His stern look softened as he gestured toward the main hall. The director is waiting. And Mr. Black arrived early, he has news. Sirius is here. Harry's face lit up. Race you to the conference room. Before Griphook could protest, Harry was off again, racing through the bank's corridors with the easy confidence of someone who knew every twist and turn intimately. Gringotts had become more than a refuge, it was home. Director Ragnarok's private conference room had changed significantly over the past year. What was once a formal, intimidating space now featured a strange blend of goblin and wizard artifacts. A training dummy stood in one corner beside a bookshelf filled with texts in both English and gobbledygook. A cauldron sat cooling on a special stand, and various magical instruments littered the large central table. Sirius Black rose from his chair when Harry burst in, opening his arms for the flying hug that had become their greeting ritual. There's my favorite godson. Sirius laughed, spinning Harry around once before setting him down. I'm your only godson, Harry pointed out, a familiar exchange between them. Which makes you my favorite by default. Sirius ruffled his hair, then stepped back to examine him. You've grown another inch, I swear. Griphook entered more sedately. The healing potions continue to show excellent results. Mr. Potter is now within normal height parameters for his age. Just Harry, the boy corrected automatically. You're my guardian, Griphook. You don't have to call me Mr. Potter all the time. The goblin's mouth twitched. Old habits, Harry. Director Ragnarok cleared his throat. Now that we're all present, shall we begin today's lessons? But first, I believe Mr. Black has news to share. Sirius's face broke into a wide grin. It's official. The ministry has finally processed the last of my reparations claim. I've been fully exonerated, my family properties have been returned, and, he paused dramatically, I've been granted an Order of Merlin, 2nd class, for suffering wrongful imprisonment in service to the truth. Congratulations, Ragnarok said with a sharp-toothed smile. A victory hard won. And perfectly timed, Griphook added. The publicity will strengthen our position at next week's Wisengamot hearing. Harry, who had been following the complex legal and political maneuverings with growing understanding, nodded. That's the one about changing the guardianship laws, right? Exactly, Sirius confirmed. We're pushing for formal recognition of cross-species guardianship rights. No more of this temporary arrangement nonsense the ministry keeps trying to impose. The past year had seen multiple attempts by certain factions within the ministry to challenge Harry's unusual living arrangement. Though the Goblin declaration of war against Dumbledore had secured their initial custody of Harry, conservative elements in wizarding government continued to argue that a wizard child belonged exclusively with wizard guardians. Will Dumbledore be there? Harry asked quietly. The adults exchanged glances. Yes, Ragnarok finally answered. Though his influence has diminished considerably, he retains his position as headmaster of Hogwarts, which grants him a seat at the hearing. Harry's face hardened with determination. Then I want to be there too. Harry, Sirius began cautiously, these proceedings can be boring and sometimes unpleasant, I know, Harry interrupted. But this is about me, isn't it? About where I live and who takes care of me. I should get to speak for myself. Griphook looked at him with unmistakable pride. Your argument has merit. In goblin culture, even the youngest members of a clan have the right to speak on matters directly affecting them. It would be powerful, Sirius acknowledged, warming to the idea. The boy who lived, standing up for his right to be raised by those who actually care about his welfare, regardless of species. Then it's settled, Ragnarok declared. Harry will attend the hearing, properly prepared and protected. Harry grinned triumphantly. So what am I learning today? Ragnarok gestured to the cauldron. Healing potions. If you're to speak before the Wizengamot, you should understand exactly how the potions that saved your life function. For the next 2 hours, Harry absorbed information about healing potions, their magical properties, and how goblin brewing techniques differed from wizarding methods. He had discovered early in his education that he had a natural aptitude for potions, something Griphook attributed to his mother's talent in the field. Lily Potter earned the respect of our master brewers during the last war, Griphook had told him. She developed modified healing potions that worked on both wizards and goblins when St. Mungo's refused to treat non-human casualties. These stories of his parents, their accomplishments, their character, their lives beyond simply being victims of Voldemort, were precious gifts that both his guardians provided regularly. Sirius offered personal anecdotes and memories, while the goblins shared professional encounters and records from the Potter accounts. After potions came combat training, not with wands, as Harry was still too young for a wand of his own, but with goblin techniques for channeling magic through movement and intent. Focus, Harry, Ragnarok instructed as Harry attempted to shatter a small stone using only his concentrated magic. Feel the connections between your core and your target. Harry closed his eyes, sensing the now familiar warmth of his magic gathering in his chest, then directed it through his outstretched palm toward the stone. A faint crack appeared along the surface. Better, Ragnarok approved. Again. By the end of the session, Harry had managed to split the stone completely in half, a feat that left him exhausted but proud. That's wandless magic, Sirius remarked, impressed. Most adult wizards can't do that, even with training. It's not exactly wandless by wizard standards, Ragnarok corrected. Harry is using goblin methods, which operate on different principles. Still, his progress is remarkable for one so young. Harry collapsed into a chair, accepting the glass of water Griphook handed him. Will I still need a wand when I go to Hogwarts? Yes, Sirius confirmed. Different types of magic, pup. What you're learning here is valuable and unique, but wizard education requires wand work. Speaking of education, Griphook interjected, we've received another letter from Augusta Longbottom requesting a playdate between Harry and her grandson. Sirius brightened. Neville's a good lad. Quiet, but he was at Harry's birthday party last month. They seemed to get along. Harry nodded, remembering the shy boy who had given him a rare magical plant as a present. I liked him. He knows a lot about plants. The Longbottom alliance would be politically advantageous, Ragnarok noted. Augusta holds significant influence in the traditionalist factions that currently oppose our guardianship arrangement. Not everything is about politics, Sirius protested. Harry needs friends his own age. Friends who also provide strategic advantages are preferable to those who don't, Griphook countered. Harry had grown accustomed to these exchanges, Sirius emphasizing normal childhood experiences while his goblin guardians focused on political and financial strategy. Strangely, he found value in both perspectives. I want to be friends with Neville, Harry decided. And I want to see the Longbottom greenhouses he told me about. But maybe we can invite him here first. To see where I live. The adults looked surprised. You want to bring a wizard child into Gringotts? Into our living quarters? Griphook asked. Harry nodded eagerly. Why not? If we want wizards to accept goblins as guardians, shouldn't they see how well I live here? And Neville seemed nice. I don't think he'd be rude or anything. Sirius laughed. Out of the mouths of babes. The boy has a point, you know. A controlled introduction for the right wizard families could change some minds. Ragnock stroked his pointed chin thoughtfully. It has merit as a strategy. Starting with the Longbottom heir makes sense. Augusta is stern but fair-minded. Then it's settled, Harry declared, mimicking Ragnock's authoritative tone so perfectly that all three adults had to suppress smiles. Neville will visit next week, and then I'll go to see his greenhouses. As they concluded the day's lessons, Harry felt the comfortable weight of his pendant against his chest. In the years since his rescue, he had come to understand just how unusual his situation was, a wizard child with joint goblin-wizard guardianship, learning magic that crossed traditional boundaries, navigating political complexities most adults found challenging. But he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Augusta Longbottom was not easily impressed. As the formidable matriarch of the ancient and noble house of Longbottom, she had seen enough in her long life to develop a healthy skepticism toward innovation for innovation's sake. Traditional ways had served the wizarding world well for centuries. Which made her current situation all the more remarkable. "More tea, Madame Longbottom?" Griphook asked politely, holding an exquisite silver teapot that she recognized as goblin-crafted. "Thank you," she replied, extending her cup. The fact that she was taking tea in a goblin's private quarters within Gringotts, something which had likely done in recorded history, was not lost on her. Across the room, Neville and Harry sat cross-legged on the floor, examining a collection of rare stones that possessed various magical properties. "This one stores spells," Harry was explaining, holding up a smooth black stone with silver flecks. "The goblins use them for security enchantments. And this one," he held up a reddish crystal, "can detect poisons." Neville handled each stone with careful reverence. "Gran has some crystals in our garden that help plants grow, but nothing like these." "Perhaps we could arrange a trade," Griphook suggested. "Certain magical plants are difficult for us to cultivate underground. The Longbottom greenhouses are renowned." Augusta raised an eyebrow. "A direct trade agreement between the Longbottom estate and Gringotts? That would be unusual." "These are unusual times," Sirius Black commented from his armchair. Though he maintained a casual posture, Augusta wasn't fooled. Black had positioned himself strategically in the conversation, letting Griphook lead while providing wizard perspective when helpful. "Indeed," Augusta agreed. "I must say, when Neville returned from Mr. Potter's birthday party insisting he wanted to visit Gringotts, I was skeptical. Our families have always been allied, but this arrangement." She gestured vaguely, encompassing the goblin quarters. "You had concerns about Harry's welfare," Griphook stated directly. Augusta appreciated the straightforwardness. "I did. Many still do. A wizard child raised by goblins is unprecedented." "Not raised exclusively by goblins," Sirius corrected. "It's a joint guardianship. Harry spends time at my home as well. And receives tutoring from qualified wizard instructors in addition to his goblin education," Griphook added. "We recognize the importance of his wizarding heritage." Augusta watched as Harry patiently explained another stone's properties to Neville, who listened with rapt attention. The Potter boy was nothing like she had expected. Well-spoken, confident without arrogance, knowledgeable beyond his years, and physically healthy, a far cry from the abused child described in last year's scandalous reports. "He seems remarkably well-adjusted," she admitted. "Especially considering his early years with those awful muggles." "Harry is resilient," Griphook said with unmistakable pride. "And determined to learn everything about both his worlds." "Both his worlds," Augusta repeated thoughtfully. "You truly see him as belonging to both goblin and wizard society." "He is the bridge," Griphook said simply. "The first in generations to truly understand both perspectives." Before Augusta could respond, the boys approached. "Gran," Neville said with unusual confidence, "Harry has goblin fighting lessons every morning. Could I join when he visits our house next week?" Augusta blinked in surprise. "Neville, asking to learn fighting? Her timid grandson who preferred plants to almost any other activity. These lessons involve physical training and basic self-defense, Griphook explained. Beneficial for focus and confidence. And really fun, Harry added with a grin. Killclaw, he's my training partner, says Neville has good balance for plant work, so he probably learned fast. Augusta studied her grandson's hopeful expression. The boy had shown more animation in the past hour than she'd seen in months. I suppose arrangements could be made, she conceded. Perhaps Mr. Potter's instructor could visit along with him. Blackfist would be honored, Griphook confirmed. He rarely has the opportunity to train wizard children. As the visit continued, Augusta found her preconceptions continually challenged. The goblin quarters were not the sparse, cold chambers she had imagined, but comfortable spaces filled with beautiful craftsmanship. The interaction between Harry and his goblin guardian showed genuine affection and respect. Even more telling was Sirius Black's easy acceptance of the arrangement. By the time they prepared to leave, Augusta had made her decision. I will speak in favor of the cross-species guardianship legislation at next week's Wisengamot hearing, she announced. The adults tried to hide their surprise, unsuccessfully. May I ask what changed your mind? Sirius inquired carefully. Augusta gestured toward the boys, who were making plans for Neville's turn to host. Results speak louder than theories, Mr. Black. Mr. Potter is clearly thriving under this arrangement, unusual though it may be. And if there's one thing the Longbottom family understands, it's that a child's welfare must come before political considerations. The subtle reference to her son and daughter-in-law, tortured into insanity by Death Eaters, leaving Neville in her care, wasn't lost on anyone. Thank you, Madam Longbottom, Griphook said with a formal bow. Your support is significant. Don't thank me yet, she warned. There will be considerable opposition. Lucius Malfoy has been particularly vocal about the goblin corruption of the Potter heir, as he puts it. Sirius scowled. Malfoy's lucky he wriggled out of an Azkaban sentence. His opinion counts for nothing. His gold counts for much, Augusta countered. Particularly with Minister Fudge. Then perhaps it's time the Potter and Black fortunes made their influence felt as well, Griphook suggested with a calculating gleam in his eye. With the Longbottom alliance, we would represent 3 of the wealthiest ancient and noble houses. Augusta's lips curved into a rare smile. I do believe I'm going to enjoy this cooperation, Mr. Griphook. It has been too long since the old families properly checked Lucius's ambitions. As they said their goodbyes, Harry caught Neville in a quick hug that the other boy returned after an initial moment of surprise. See you next week, Harry said cheerfully. And maybe you can show me some magic plants that would grow in my room here. I'll bring cuttings, Neville promised, his usual shyness momentarily forgotten in his enthusiasm. Watching them, Augusta felt a surge of certainty. Supporting this unusual guardianship was the right decision, not just politically, but for the future these children would help shape. The Wisengamot chambers buzzed with anticipation. The public gallery was packed to capacity, witches and wizards craning for a glimpse of the proceedings below. Reporters clutched quick quotes quills, ready to document every moment of what the Daily Prophet had dubbed the guardianship battle of the century. Harry sat between Sirius and Griphook in a special witness area, trying not to fidget in his formal robes. They were midnight blue with silver trim, goblin-made but in a wizard style, symbolizing his unique position. Remember, Griphook murmured, you only speak when directly addressed by the chief witch. And stay calm no matter what anyone says, Sirius added. Some of them might try to provoke you. Harry nodded, surveying the chamber. Members of the Wisengamot in plum-colored robes filled the tiered seats. He recognized Augusta Longbottom sitting ramrod straight in the second row, and spotted a man with long blonde hair who must be Lucius Malfoy based on Sirius's descriptions. His gaze finally settled on Albus Dumbledore, seated not in the chief warlock's chair he had occupied for decades, but in a standard member's position. The elderly wizard looked diminished somehow, his customary twinkle notably absent as he stared straight ahead, carefully avoiding Harry's direction. A gavel banged, bringing the chamber to order. "This special session of the Wisengamot is now in session," announced Amelia Bones, who had been elected interim chief which following Dumbledore's suspension. "We are here to consider Proposal 1726-B, regarding the legal recognition of cross-species guardianship arrangements." She shuffled her papers. "While the proposal addresses all magical beings classified as sentient under the Treaty of 1837, I think we all recognize that the case of Harry Potter has brought this matter to immediate attention." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "Before we hear arguments, I wish to clarify that this is not a custody hearing. The temporary joint guardianship of Harry Potter by Sirius Black and Senior Account Manager Griphook remains in effect regardless of today's outcome. We are considering whether to formalize such arrangements in magical law moving forward." A wizard from the back row stood. "Point of order, Chief Witch. If the boy is already under this arrangement, why do we need to change the law at all?" "Because, Lord Selwyn," Amelia replied evenly, "the current situation exists only through a series of temporary emergency provisions and treaty interpretations. Legal clarity would benefit all parties." Another voice called out, "And what of the Goblin declaration of war against Albus Dumbledore? Does that not complicate matters?" "The declaration remains in effect," Griphook stated, rising to address the chamber. "However, it targets Albus Dumbledore personally, not the wizarding government or Hogwarts school. It has no bearing on my guardianship responsibilities." "The goblin speaks as if he has equal standing in this chamber," Lucius Malfoy drawled, not bothering to fully stand. "Most irregular." "The goblin has a name," Sirius snapped, "and as guardian to a wizard minor, he has full speaking rights in these proceedings. Perhaps if you'd read the meeting protocols, Lucius, you'd know that." Before Malfoy could retort, Amelia banged her gavel. "Lord Black is correct. All registered guardians may speak regarding matters affecting their wards. Now, to the substance of the proposal." For the next hour, various members argued for and against the legislation. Augusta Longbottom spoke powerfully in favor, describing her recent visit to Gringotts and Harry's obvious well-being. Lucius Malfoy led the opposition, raising dire warnings about foreign influences, corrupting wizard children and diluting our sacred traditions. Throughout it all, Harry sat quietly, though his fists occasionally clenched at particularly offensive statements. Finally, Amelia Bones turned to their section. "The Wisengamot would now like to hear from the guardians directly involved. Lord Black, would you care to speak first?" Sirius rose with uncharacteristic formality. "Thank you, Chief Witch. My position is simple. Harry's parents named me his guardian in their will. Due to my wrongful imprisonment, I was unable to fulfill that role for 4 years. During that time, Albus Dumbledore placed Harry with abusive Muggle relatives explicitly against James and Lily's written wishes." He paused, letting the statement sink in. "When the goblins discovered Harry's situation, they did what any decent being would do, they rescued him and provided emergency care. Their healing saved his life and restored his health. Their protection kept him safe when the ministry failed to do so. Their education has given him knowledge of both his wizarding heritage and goblin culture." Sirius gestured to Griphook. Senior Account Manager Griphook stepped forward to serve as Harry's guardian within Gringotts. "He has shown dedication, wisdom, and genuine affection for my godson. Our joint guardianship allows Harry to experience both worlds while maintaining the safety and stability he deserves." He looked around the chamber challengingly. "I can think of no logical reason why this arrangement should not be formalized in law, unless that reason is simple prejudice against non-wizard beings." As he sat, Griphook stood. "Wizards of the Wisengamot," the goblin began, his voice carrying surprising power for his stature. "For centuries, goblins have guarded wizard gold, managed wizard inheritances, and protected wizard treasures. We have done so with honor and integrity, even during periods of conflict between our peoples." He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "When we discovered the Potter heir chained in a cupboard, suffering years of abuse while his substantial inheritance sat unused in our vaults, we faced a choice. We could follow the letter of wizard law, returning him to wizard authorities who had already failed him once. Or we could invoke the older laws, the treaties that bind our peoples beyond the politics of any single era. His gaze swept the chamber. The Treaty of 1437 explicitly grants us authority to protect heirs to accounts we manage when their welfare is threatened. This is not a new power we seek, but the recognition of responsibilities we already hold. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Clearly, many members were unfamiliar with this aspect of goblin treaties. Harry Potter has flourished under joint guardianship, Griphook continued. He learns wizard magic and history from qualified tutors. He spends time in both wizard and goblin communities. He builds friendships with children from established wizard families while learning respect for goblin traditions. He straightened to his full height. If this arrangement benefits one wizard child so significantly, might it not benefit others? Might not all our peoples gain from greater understanding and cooperation in raising the next generation? As Griphook sat, Amelia Bones looked directly at Harry. Mr. Potter, while you are young, these proceedings directly affect your future. Would you like to address the Wizengamot? Harry swallowed hard, then stood. The chamber fell completely silent. My name is Harry Potter, he began, his voice small at first but growing stronger with each word. Until last year, I didn't know magic existed. I didn't know my parents were heroes. I didn't know I had a godfather or an inheritance or anything about Hogwarts. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with various members. I lived in a cupboard under the stairs. My cousin had 2 bedrooms, but I slept with spiders. When I did accidental magic, my uncle would lock me up without food. I thought my parents died in a car crash because my father was drunk. That's what my aunt told me. Gasps and mutters filled the chamber. Harry continued steadily. Then the goblins found me. They took me to Gringotts and gave me medicine. They found my godfather and got him out of prison. They taught me about magic and my parents. They gave me a real bedroom and proper clothes and never, ever locked me in cupboards. His gaze finally landed on Dumbledore, who looked physically pained by Harry's words. Mr. Dumbledore put me with people who hated magic. He never came to check on me. He never told me about my parents. The goblins did that. Griphook did that. Why would you say he can't be my guardian just because he's a goblin? The simplicity of the question hung in the air. I have 2 guardians now, and they both take care of me in different ways. Sirius teaches me about being a wizard. Griphook teaches me about managing my inheritance and goblin magic. I need both of them. He straightened his shoulders. I'm not just a wizard anymore. I'm part of the goblin nation too. That makes me special, not wrong. With those words, Harry sat down. The silence that followed was profound. Amelia Bones cleared her throat. Thank you, Mr. Potter. Your perspective is valuable to these proceedings. After allowing a moment for Harry's words to settle, she continued, are there any final statements before we put the proposal to vote? To everyone's surprise, Albus Dumbledore rose slowly from his seat. If I may, Chief Witch, he said, his voice carrying despite its softness. Amelia nodded cautiously. You may speak, Headmaster Dumbledore. Dumbledore turned to face the chamber. I have listened carefully today, as I hope we all have. Much has been said about my mistakes regarding Harry Potter's placement, mistakes I do not deny making, however well-intentioned they may have been. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. When I left Harry with his Muggle relatives, I believed the blood protection from his mother's sacrifice would keep him safe from external threats. I failed to consider that safety must include protection from those within one's home as well. For that grievous oversight, I can only offer my sincere apologies, particularly to Harry himself. He looked directly at Harry for the first time. I am truly sorry, my boy. Harry gave a small, uncertain nod in acknowledgement. As to the matter before us today, Dumbledore continued, I find myself reflecting on the nature of guardianship itself. Is it not, at its core, about ensuring a child's welfare, education, and happiness? If these objectives are being met, as they clearly are in Harry's case, then perhaps our traditions regarding who may serve as guardian deserve reconsideration. Shocked whispers erupted throughout the chamber. No one had expected Dumbledore to support the proposal. The wizarding world has long maintained certain barriers between ourselves and other magical beings, barriers born more from habit than wisdom. In my long life, I have come to believe that such divisions often prevent us from learning valuable lessons from one another. He spread his hands. I have witnessed the results of the current guardianship arrangement. Harry Potter is healthy, well-educated, and remarkably balanced in his understanding of both wizard and goblin perspectives. If that is corruption, as some have suggested, then perhaps we could all benefit from such corruption. With a small bow toward the Chief Witch, Dumbledore concluded, I support Proposal 1726-B and the formal recognition of cross-species guardianship arrangements, provided appropriate safeguards are in place to ensure the child's welfare remains paramount. As he sat down, the chamber erupted in discussion. Amelia banged her gavel repeatedly to restore order. We will now proceed to vote, she announced when quiet was finally restored. Those in favor of Proposal 1726-B, please raise your wands. Lights flared across the chamber as members lifted their wands. Harry counted quickly, more than half the Wizengamot had voted in favor, including Augusta Longbottom and, surprisingly, Dumbledore himself. Those opposed. A smaller but still substantial number of wands lit, with Lucius Malfoy's among the most prominent. After a moment of calculation, Amelia announced, by a vote of 43 to 27, with 5 abstentions, Proposal 1726-B is approved. Cross-species guardianship arrangements will now be recognized under wizarding law, subject to the same welfare requirements as traditional guardianships. She banged her gavel. The joint guardianship of Harry Potter by Sirius Black and Senior Account Manager Griphook is hereby formally recognized and registered with the Ministry of Magic. Sirius let out a whoop of triumph, while Griphook maintained his dignity with only a sharp-toothed smile betraying his satisfaction. Harry, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment, found himself blinking back tears of relief. It was official. He had a family, unusual though it might be, that no one could take away from him. Swing harder. Blackfist barked, circling as Harry and Neville practiced with wooden training swords in the Longbottom garden. Power comes from the hips, not just the arms. The two 7-year-olds adjusted their stances, faces screwed up in concentration. After 6 months of joint training sessions, alternating between Gringotts and Longbottom Manor, both boys had developed surprising skill with the goblin weapons. From the terrace, Augusta Longbottom watched with Griphook and Sirius, sipping iced tea in the summer heat. Neville has changed remarkably, she commented. His confidence improves daily. Griphook nodded. Goblin combat training emphasizes the connection between physical discipline and magical focus. Both boys show aptitude. And it's good for them to get properly tired out, Sirius added with a grin. Makes them less likely to experiment with turning the furniture into animals. Augusta's eyebrow rose. That was your influence, I presume, Lord Black. Can't prove a thing, Sirius replied cheerfully. But hypothetically, showing them that photo album of Hogwarts pranks might have inspired certain, creative endeavors. Their casual conversation belied the significance of the scene, a goblin combat instructor teaching wizard children in the garden of an ancient and noble house, with the family matriarch's full approval. Such a sight would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. The diplomatic breakthrough with the Longbottoms had paved the way for similar arrangements with other families. The Weasleys had been next, Arthur's fascination with goblin craftsmanship leading to regular exchanges of knowledge, while the younger Weasley children occasionally joined Harry and Neville for lessons. Even Dumbledore had made tentative overtures toward reconciliation, though the Goblin declaration of war remained technically in effect. I've received another letter from Hogwarts, Augusta mentioned. Minerva McGonagall is quite persistent in her requests for a meeting regarding the boys' future education. Acting Headmistress McGonagall, Griphook corrected. Her authority during Dumbledore's probation is significant. Sirius stretched lazily. We should hear her out. Harry and Neville will be attending Hogwarts together in a few years. Might as well establish a good relationship with the administration early. Assuming we send Neville to Hogwarts, Augusta said with uncharacteristic hesitation. The Goblin educational approach has shown such positive results. Griphook and Sirius exchanged surprised glances. Are you considering alternatives for Neville? Griphook asked carefully. Augusta watched her grandson successfully block a complex attack sequence. I'm considering all options that might help him reach his potential. Neville was once so timid that relatives wondered if he might be a squib. Now look at him. Indeed, Neville moved with newfound grace, his round face determined as he countered Harry's attacks with growing confidence. Hogwarts remains the premier magical institution in Britain, Griphook noted. Though I'll admit our methods differ substantially. Perhaps a blended approach, Sirius suggested. The boys continue their current education until Hogwarts age, then attend with supplementary training during holidays. Augusta nodded thoughtfully. That has merit. Speaking of education, I understand Harry begins formal air training next month. Yes, Griphook confirmed. As he approaches his 8th birthday, it's time to introduce him to the responsibilities of heading House Potter. Starting with a formal audit of the Potter accounts, Sirius added. The goblins have been managing them, but Harry needs to understand his financial position before he can make informed decisions. Augusta looked impressed. Most wizard heirs don't receive such training until much later. The Black and Potter methods were particularly lax, as I recall. Sirius grimaced. My father's idea of heir training was mainly lectures on blood purity and curses for enforcing it. We're taking a more practical approach with Harry. Their conversation was interrupted as the boys' training session ended. Neville and Harry approached, sweaty but grinning, wooden swords propped on their shoulders. Did you see? Neville asked his grandmother eagerly. I blocked Harry's feint attack. Well done, Neville, Augusta replied with more warmth than she would have shown 2 years earlier. Your progress is impressive. Harry's still better with the sword, Neville admitted without jealousy. But I'm better with the staff. Different builds, different optimal weapons, Blackfist grunted, following the boys. Potter has speed. Longbottom has stability. Good combination in battle. Speaking of combinations, Harry said, wiping sweat from his forehead, can we show them what we've been practicing, Neville? The other boy nodded eagerly. We've been trying something new. Combining goblin focus techniques with wizard incantations. Without wands? Sirius asked, intrigued. We're not old enough for wands yet, Harry reminded him. But Blackfist showed us how to channel magic through intent, and we found some simple spells in those books you gave me for my birthday. The adults exchanged curious glances as the boys moved to an open area of the garden. They stood back to back, eyes closed in concentration. Lumos, they said in unison, extending their hands. Small balls of light appeared above their palms, flickering and unstable, but definitely magical. Remarkable, Augusta breathed. Wandless magic at their age. Not exactly wandless, Griphook corrected, echoing Ragnarok's explanation from a year earlier. They're using goblin channeling techniques with wizard incantations. A hybrid approach. Blackfist grunted approval. Good focus. Been practicing when they should be resting. The lights faded as the boys lowered their hands, looking both exhausted and triumphant. That was brilliant. Sirius exclaimed, hurrying over to ruffle both their hair. James would have killed for that skill during our Hogwarts night wanderings. It's not very strong yet, Harry admitted. And we can only do simple spells. But it works without a wand, Neville added. Gran says that's really advanced magic. Augusta nodded, studying the boys with new assessment. Indeed it is. Most wizard children your age show accidental magic only, uncontrolled and unpredictable. Deliberate wandless casting is typically mastered by only the most powerful adult wizards. The hybrid approach may be the key, Griphook mused. Goblin magic doesn't rely on wands, but rather on focused intent channeled through alternative means. Combined with wizard incantations. You've created something new, Sirius finished. Something neither purely goblin nor purely wizard. Harry beamed at the praise. We want to try other spells too. Simple charms and maybe even some transfiguration. With proper supervision, Griphook amended firmly. Of course, Harry agreed quickly. We always practice safely. As the boys were sent to wash up before lunch, the adults lingered in the garden, contemplating the implications of what they'd witnessed. They're creating a new magical tradition, Augusta said quietly. One that bridges our worlds. Just as the legislation intended, Griphook noted. Cultural exchange benefits both societies. Sirius watched the retreating boys with a mixture of pride and wistfulness. James and Lily would be amazed. Their son, pioneering goblin wizard magic while being raised by the strangest family arrangement in wizarding history. Not so strange anymore, Augusta pointed out. Since the legislation passed, 3 other wizard families have applied for joint guardianship arrangements with magical beings, 1 with a centaur scholar, 2 with goblin financial experts. Progress, Griphook acknowledged, though still viewed as exceptional rather than normalized. Give it time, Sirius advised. 2 years ago, the idea of Augusta Longbottom hosting a goblin combat instructor in her garden would have seemed impossible. Augusta's lips twitched. Indeed. My late husband would be bemused. As would many of our ancestors, Griphook agreed. Yet here we stand. The Potter vault stretched into shadowy depths, filled with not just gold but artifacts, books, and family heirlooms collected over centuries. Harry stood at its entrance, wide-eyed despite his years living within Gringotts. He'd visited his trust vault before, but this, the main Potter family vault, was different. This is all mine, he whispered. Yours to manage, Griphook corrected, standing beside him. Wealth brings responsibility, not just privilege. Sirius placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Your father showed me this vault just once. He said the same thing, that being a Potter meant being responsible for more than just yourself. Harry nodded solemnly. At nearly 8 years old, he had absorbed enough of both goblin and wizard values to understand the weight of inheritance. Today begins your formal heir training, Ragnarok announced from behind them. The Gringotts director rarely left his offices for client meetings, but Harry's education had become something of a pet project for him. You will learn to manage your estate, understand its history, and prepare to take your place as Lord Potter when you come of age. With guidance, Sirius added hastily, seeing Harry's momentary look of panic. Lots of guidance. No one expects you to manage all this tomorrow. Ragnarok gestured them forward into the vault. We'll begin with a full inventory. Every artifact, every investment, every property must be accounted for. For the next several hours, Harry received his first comprehensive overview of the Potter estate. Gold was only the beginning, the family owned properties throughout Britain and magical investments across Europe. There were business interests, patent royalties from potions and charms developed by ancestors, and political alliances formalized in magical contracts. The Potter family historically maintained neutrality in wizard politics, Griphook explained as they reviewed documents. Neither purely light nor dark in alignment, they wielded influence through economic means rather than ideological positions. Until my dad, Harry noted. He fought against Voldemort directly. Sirius nodded. James and Lily both chose sides in that war. They believed some conflicts demand taking a stand, regardless of traditional family positions. A costly decision, but honorable, Ragnarok acknowledged. Their sacrifice protected more than just you, Harry. It ended a war that threatened both wizard and goblin nations. As they continued the inventory, Harry discovered personal treasures among the financial assets: his mother's journals, his father's school trunks, family photo albums preserved with stasis charms. "Can I take these back to my room?" he asked, holding a leather-bound journal with his mother's name embossed on the cover. "Of course," Griphook agreed. "Personal items may be removed at your discretion. Larger artifacts should remain secured here until you have suitable alternative storage." Harry carefully set aside the items he wished to take, then returned to the financial review. Despite his youth, he asked surprisingly insightful questions about investments and property management, a testament to the education he'd received over the past 2 years. "The Potter investments in magical creature reserves are performing well," Griphook noted as they reviewed a ledger. "Particularly the Dragon Sanctuary in Romania." "Dragons?" Harry perked up immediately. Sirius laughed. "Your grandfather had a fascination with magical creatures. He established conservation trusts for several endangered species." "Can I visit the Dragon Sanctuary?" Harry asked eagerly. The adults exchanged glances. "Perhaps when you're older," Ragnarok suggested diplomatically. "Dragons tend to eat small wizards who wander too close." "I'm not that small anymore," Harry protested. "The healing potions fixed that." "Still too small for dragons," Griphook said firmly. "However, a visit to some of your other properties might be arranged. The Potter family owns a cottage in Wales near a hippogriff nesting ground." Harry's eyes lit up. "Really? When can we go?" "The summer holiday might be suitable," Griphook considered. "Educational trips are important for a proper understanding of your holdings." As they completed the inventory, Ragnarok presented Harry with a special ledger bound in red leather with gold trim. "This is the heir's ledger," he explained. "It will magically update to reflect changes in your estate. Part of your training will include reviewing it monthly and understanding all transactions." Harry accepted it reverently. "Thank you, Director Ragnarok. I'll take good care of it." "I know you will," Ragnarok replied with unusual warmth. "You've proven yourself a worthy student of both wizard and goblin traditions." As they prepared to leave the vault, Harry paused before a glass display case they hadn't examined yet. Inside lay a shimmering, silvery fabric that seemed to flow like water despite being motionless. "What's this?" he asked. Sirius's face split into a wide grin. "Ah! I was wondering if that was still here. That, Harry, is your father's invisibility cloak." "Invisibility cloak?" Harry repeated, fascinated. "It makes you invisible?" "Completely," Sirius confirmed. "And unlike most invisibility cloaks, this one never fades or deteriorates. It's been in your family for generations." "It's a Potter heirloom," Griphook noted. "You may claim it if you wish, though I suggest waiting until you're older to use it." Harry looked thoughtful. "If my dad had it, why didn't he use it to hide from Voldemort?" A heavy silence fell. "An excellent question," Ragnarok said finally. "According to our records, the cloak wasn't in your parents' possession when they died. It had been loaned to Albus Dumbledore some months earlier." "Dumbledore had it?" Harry frowned. "Why?" "He said he wanted to study it," Sirius explained, his expression troubled. "Its permanence is unusual for an invisibility cloak. Most lose their power over time. And yet it was returned to the vault after your parents' deaths," Griphook observed. "Curious timing. Can I see it?" Harry asked. Ragnarok waved his hand, and the display case opened. Harry carefully lifted the cloak, marveling at its unusual texture. "It feels like nothing," he said. "Like holding solid water." "Try it on," Sirius encouraged. Harry swung the cloak around his shoulders, and gasped as his body disappeared from view, leaving only his head floating in midair. "Wicked," he exclaimed, pulling the hood up to vanish completely. "Don't get any ideas," Griphook warned as Harry reappeared, grinning mischievously. This is a valuable magical artifact, not a toy for pranks. Of course not, Harry agreed, his innocent tone belied by the sparkle in his eyes, a sparkle that reminded Sirius painfully of James. Your father would say exactly the same thing, Sirius commented. Right before using it to sneak into the kitchens at midnight. Harry carefully folded the cloak. I'll be responsible with it. It's part of my heritage, after all. As they finally left the vault, Harry clutching his mother's journals, his father's cloak, and his new ledger, Ragnarok pulled Griphook aside for a private word. The boy continues to exceed expectations, the director murmured. His understanding of both wizard and goblin concepts is remarkable for his age. He applies himself diligently, Griphook replied with pride. And absorbs knowledge from both traditions without prejudice. Watch him carefully during the next phase of training, Ragnarok advised. Few wizard children show such aptitude for goblin magic. If the pattern continues, we may need to consider additional education. Griphook raised an eyebrow. You can't mean the mysteries, Ragnarok confirmed. If he qualifies. No wizard has ever been taught the mysteries, Griphook protested. The High Council would never approve. Perhaps. Perhaps not. Ragnarok watched as Harry chatted animatedly with Sirius up ahead. Times are changing, Griphook. The boy is part of that change. With that cryptic statement, the director strode ahead, leaving Griphook to ponder the unprecedented possibilities of Harry's future. Minerva McGonagall had seen many unusual things during her decades at Hogwarts, but the scene before her still managed to raise her eyebrows. In a specially prepared classroom on the ground floor, Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom sat cross-legged on cushions, eyes closed in meditation, while a goblin instructor moved between them, occasionally tapping their shoulders to adjust their posture. Augusta Longbottom sat beside Minerva, watching the proceedings with obvious approval. Remarkable focus for boys their age, Minerva commented. What exactly are they doing? Magical core awareness exercises, Augusta explained. Goblin techniques for sensing and directing one's internal magic. It's the foundation of their wandless abilities. Minerva's eyebrows rose further. Wandless magic. At 8 years old. Limited applications only, Augusta clarified. Simple charms and minor transfigurations. But yes, both boys can perform basic spells without wands using hybrid techniques. Minerva watched as both boys raised their hands simultaneously, small objects on the table before them rising shakily into the air. Wandless levitation, she murmured. Most adult wizards struggle with that. The door opened, and Sirius Black entered with Griphook, both looking pleased to see her. Professor McGonagall, Sirius greeted warmly. Thank you for arranging this visit. It means a lot to Harry to see Hogwarts before his official attendance. It's acting headmistress now, Lord Black, she corrected with a small smile. At least until Albus's probationary period ends next month. You've done an admirable job, Griphook commented. The school's academic standards have improved notably under your leadership. Minerva inclined her head at the unexpected compliment. That's kind of you to say, account manager Griphook. Though I expect we'll return to normal operations once Albus resumes his duties. With some changes, I hope, Augusta said pointedly. The Board of Governors has been quite impressed with your curricular reforms. The boys' lesson concluded, and they bounded over to the adults, their earlier meditative composure replaced by childish enthusiasm. Professor McGonagall! Harry exclaimed. Sirius says you can turn into a cat. Can you show us? Harry, Griphook admonished, that's not how we address a headmistress. Minerva waved away the concern. It's quite all right. And yes, Mr. Potter, I am an animagus. With practiced ease, she transformed into a tabby cat, then back to her human form. Both boys applauded delightedly. Wicked. Harry grinned. Sirius can turn into a dog. He's teaching me about animagi for when I'm older. Is he indeed? Minerva gave Sirius a stern look that didn't quite hide her amusement. Well, I trust Lord Black is emphasizing the legal requirement to register with the Ministry. Of course, Professor, Sirius replied, the picture of innocence. Absolutely essential information, that. Griphook made a sound suspiciously like a snort. Now then, Minerva addressed the boys, I believe we were planning a tour of the castle. To familiarize you with Hogwarts before you attend as students. Yes, please. Neville said eagerly. Gran says the greenhouses are amazing. Can we see the Quidditch pitch too? Harry asked. And the library? Sirius says the restricted section has books that scream when you open them. Perhaps not the restricted section today, Minerva said dryly, but certainly the main library and other key areas. As they toured the castle, Minerva observed the unusual dynamic between Harry, his godfather, and his goblin guardian. There was genuine affection there, along with mutual respect that transcended species differences. Harry moved comfortably between wizard and goblin social modes, adapting his behavior and speech patterns subtly depending on who he addressed. Mr. Potter, she said during a quiet moment as they climbed the stairs toward the Gryffindor Tower, I knew your parents well. They were both in my house. Gryffindor, Harry nodded. Sirius tells me stories about them all the time. I think they would be proud of the young man you're becoming, she said softly. Your unusual upbringing seems to have given you perspectives they would have valued. Harry beamed at the compliment. Griphook says my mum was brilliant at potions and charms. And my dad was good at transfiguration, like you. Indeed, Minerva agreed. Though your father also had a talent for mischief that I hope you haven't inherited too strongly. Harry's innocent expression wouldn't have fooled anyone. I don't know what you mean, Professor. Minerva laughed despite herself. I'm sure you don't. Now, shall we continue to the Great Hall? It's nearly lunchtime. In the magnificent Great Hall, they found Albus Dumbledore waiting, his probationary status indicated by the simple teaching robes he wore rather than his usual flamboyant attire. Ah, our visitors have arrived, he said, rising from the staff table. Welcome to Hogwarts, though I suppose for some of you, it's a return rather than a first visit. Harry regarded Dumbledore warily. Though nearly 3 years had passed since the Goblin declaration of war, their interactions remained limited and formal. Headmaster, Sirius acknowledged with a nod that wasn't quite cordial but no longer openly hostile. Professor Dumbledore, Griphook corrected pointedly. Until his probation concludes. If Dumbledore was offended by the correction, he didn't show it. Quite right, account manager Griphook. Old habits die hard. He turned his attention to Harry. Mr. Potter, how are you finding Hogwarts so far? It's brilliant, sir, Harry replied politely. Just like in the stories Sirius tells. I'm pleased to hear it. I hope you'll find it a welcoming home when you join us as a student. He has a home, Griphook stated flatly. 2, in fact. Dumbledore inclined his head. Of course. Poor choice of words on my part. I meant only that Hogwarts strives to provide a familial atmosphere for all students. An awkward silence followed, broken by Neville's diplomatic comment about the enchanted ceiling. As they settled for lunch, Dumbledore made conversation about the boys' education, seeming genuinely interested in their unusual curriculum. Combining goblin magical theory with wizard practical applications, he mused when Harry explained their training. Fascinating. And you can perform basic spells without wands? Harry and Neville exchanged glances, then demonstrated by simultaneously levitating their water goblets a few inches off the table. Remarkable control, Dumbledore observed. Most wizard children rely entirely on accidental magic until they receive their wands. Different methods, different results, Griphook stated. Goblin magic has never depended on wands. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. A limitation in wizard education, perhaps, our over-reliance on wand channeling. The rest of lunch passed with surprisingly civil conversation about magical theory, Hogwarts curriculum, and the boy's future education. As they prepared to depart, Dumbledore approached Harry privately. "Mr. Potter, if I might have a moment." Harry glanced at his guardians, who watched carefully but nodded permission. "Yes, sir," Harry said cautiously. "I wish to apologize again, more directly than I have before," Dumbledore said quietly. "The decisions I made regarding your placement caused you great harm, however well-intentioned they may have been." Harry studied the old wizard's face. "Why did you leave me there? With people who hated magic?" Dumbledore sighed. "I believed the blood protection from your mother's sacrifice would keep you safe from Voldemort's followers. I failed to consider that safety means more than just physical protection from external threats." "You knew they hated magic," Harry pressed. "Mrs. Fig lived nearby. She must have told you how they treated me." Dumbledore looked genuinely pained. "Arabella was instructed to watch for magical threats, not to interfere in your home life. Another failing in my instructions. The Potters will said I wasn't supposed to go there. Ever." "Yes," Dumbledore admitted. "I believed I knew better than your parents what would keep you safe. I was wrong." The simple admission surprised Harry. "The goblins still have a war declared against you, you know." "I know," Dumbledore nodded. "Quite justified, from their perspective. Though I hope someday it might end." Harry considered this. "Griphook says wars end when justice is satisfied." "A wise perspective," Dumbledore agreed. "And what would satisfy justice in this case, do you think?" Harry thought for a moment. "I don't know yet. But I'm learning about both wizard and goblin justice systems. Maybe I'll figure it out someday." "I have no doubt you will," Dumbledore said softly. "You are growing into a remarkable young man, Harry Potter. One who might yet bridge many divides in our world." As Harry rejoined his guardians, Dumbledore turned to Minerva. "The boy has changed significantly," he observed. "For the better," she replied firmly. "His unusual guardianship has given him perspectives neither of us could have provided." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "Perhaps my greatest mistake was believing there was only one path forward, my own." Minerva's expression softened slightly. "It's never too late to learn, Albus. Even for someone as old as you. Especially for someone as old as me," he corrected with a hint of his old twinkle. "Age makes one susceptible to believing one's own wisdom infallible." As the visitors departed, Dumbledore watched Harry walking between Sirius and Griphook, chatting animatedly about all he'd seen. "A bridge between worlds," he murmured to himself. "More important, perhaps, than I ever imagined." The summons to Director Ragnarok's office came unexpectedly one autumn morning. Harry, who had just returned from a weekend at Sirius's home, found Griphook waiting with unusual formality when he arrived at their quarters. "The director requests our presence immediately," Griphook announced, his expression giving nothing away. "Am I in trouble?" Harry asked, mentally reviewing his recent activities for rule-breaking. "Not to my knowledge," Griphook replied. "But the summons is marked urgent." They made their way through Gringotts' labyrinthine corridors to Ragnarok's office, where they found not only the director but a full delegation of senior goblins, including several Harry recognized from the High Council. "Harry Potter," Ragnarok greeted formally. "Thank you for coming promptly." "Of course, Director," Harry replied, adopting the formal manners he'd learned for goblin official functions. "How may I be of service?" The assembled goblins exchanged approving glances at his proper response. "We have been monitoring your progress in goblin magical techniques," Ragnarok explained. "Your abilities have developed beyond our initial expectations." Harry remained silent, sensing more to come. "Last week, during your training with Master Irongrip, you successfully performed a metal-shaping charm. Is this correct?" Harry nodded. "Yes, Director. A small silver disc. I was able to form it into a serpent shape." "Metal shaping is not taught to non-goblins," one of the counselors stated. "It is considered proprietary magic." Harry paled slightly. I didn't know it was forbidden. I was just practicing what I'd observed during my lessons with Griphook and Master Irongrip. It is not forbidden for you to learn, Ragnarok clarified. It is simply unprecedented. No wizard has demonstrated the ability to perform goblin metal magic in centuries. Oh, Harry said, relieved he wasn't in trouble but confused by the serious atmosphere. Is that good? It is significant, another counselor said. Particularly given your unique position as ward of the Goblin Nation and heir to a wizard ancient and noble house. Ragnarok leaned forward. Harry, the High Council has been debating a matter of great importance regarding your education. Your demonstration of aptitude for goblin magic has brought this matter to a decision point. What matter? Harry asked, glancing at Griphook, who looked as serious as he'd ever seen him. The mysteries, Ragnarok stated. The deepest secrets of goblin magic, traditionally taught only to those goblin youth who demonstrate exceptional magical ability and commitment to our ways. Harry's eyes widened. And, you're considering teaching me? A wizard? You are not merely a wizard, the eldest counselor spoke for the first time. You are a ward of our nation, raised in our traditions alongside your wizard heritage. You speak our language, respect our customs, and now demonstrate aptitude for our magic. The council has voted, Ragnarok announced. You will be offered the opportunity to study the mysteries, becoming the first wizard in recorded history to receive this honor. Harry sat stunned, understanding enough about goblin culture to recognize the monumental significance of what was being proposed. This is not a decision to be made lightly, Griphook warned. The study of the mysteries requires oaths of secrecy and loyalty to the Goblin Nation. While these would not conflict with your wizard obligations, they would bind you to protect goblin knowledge. It would change your magic permanently, another counselor added. Once learned, the mysteries become part of your core, influencing all magic you perform thereafter. Harry took a deep breath. May I ask a question? Ragnarok nodded permission. Why me? Why now? Is it just because I can do the metal shaping, or is there another reason? The goblins exchanged glances, clearly impressed by the perceptiveness of the question. Partially because of your demonstrated ability, Ragnarok acknowledged. But also because times are changing, Harry Potter. The barriers between wizard and goblin societies have begun to shift, largely due to your unusual circumstance. Our seers have also spoken, the eldest counselor added. They foresee troubled times ahead, times when ancient alliances may need renewal. You stand at a unique crossroads. The Dark Lord who killed your parents is not truly gone, Ragnarok stated bluntly. Our sources suggest he seeks to return. When he does, both our peoples will face grave danger. Harry felt a chill. Though he'd been told the basic story of Voldemort's attack and apparent defeat, the goblins had never before suggested the threat might return. If I learn these mysteries, he asked carefully, how would that help against Voldemort? It would give you weapons he would neither expect nor understand, Ragnarok explained. Goblin magic follows different rules than wizard magic. It interacts with wizard spells in ways few dark wizards comprehend. More importantly, Griphook added, it would symbolize a true alliance between our peoples, one based on shared knowledge rather than merely treaties and commerce. Harry considered this solemnly. Would Sirius be allowed to know if I agreed to this? The fact of your training, yes, Ragnarok confirmed. The specific content, no. The mysteries remain secret even among many goblins. I would need time to think about it, Harry said finally. This seems too important for an immediate answer. The council members nodded approvingly. A wise response, the eldest said. You have until the winter solstice to decide. If you accept, training would begin on your 9th birthday. We ask only that you discuss this with no one except account manager Griphook and Lord Black, Ragnarok instructed. The offer itself must remain confidential. Harry nodded his understanding. Thank you for this honor. I promise to give it proper consideration. As they left the director's office, Griphook placed a hand on Harry's shoulder, a rare gesture of physical affection from the normally reserved goblin. "You handled that with remarkable maturity," he said quietly. "I'm still not sure I understand everything it means," Harry admitted. "Will you help me?" "Of course," Griphook promised. "Though the final decision must be yours alone." That evening, after Harry sent a message asking Sirius to come to Gringotts urgently, the three of them sat in their private quarters discussing the unprecedented offer. "The mysteries," Sirius repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've heard rumors, of course, every pureblood has stories about goblins' secret magic, but I never thought they were entirely true." "They are more than true," Griphook confirmed. "The mysteries form the foundation of our most powerful magic, knowledge protected for millennia. And they want to teach this to Harry?" Sirius still sounded stunned. "No offense, pup, but why?" Harry recounted the council's explanations, including the ominous reference to Voldemort's possible return. Sirius's expression darkened. "They believe he's coming back. Based on what?" "Goblin intelligence networks are extensive," Griphook replied carefully. "And our seers operate differently from wizard diviners. The signs have been concerning. All the more reason for Harry to have normal childhood years before facing such threats," Sirius argued. "He's 8 years old, for Merlin's sake." "I'm almost 9, Harry corrected automatically. "Still a child," Sirius insisted. "One who should be playing Quidditch and making friends, not preparing for magical warfare." "He would still do those things," Griphook countered. "The training would be gradual, integrated with his existing education. And knowledge of the mysteries would not eliminate his childhood, it would protect his future." Harry watched the debate thoughtfully. "What would my parents have wanted?" he asked suddenly. Both guardians fell silent, considering the question. "Your father valued tradition," Sirius said finally. "But he also believed in breaking barriers when they no longer served a purpose. He married your mother, a Muggle-born witch, despite pure-blood expectations. Your mother was a scholar at heart," Griphook added. "She valued knowledge from all sources. She once spent 3 months studying goblin healing techniques when developing her own potions." Harry nodded, absorbing this. "And they both fought against Voldemort directly. They didn't hide or stay neutral." "No," Sirius agreed softly. "They made their choice to stand against darkness, whatever the cost. I think," Harry said slowly, "I think I want to accept the council's offer. Not just because of Voldemort or politics, but because it feels right. I'm already part of both worlds. This would make that official in a way nothing else could." Griphook nodded with obvious approval, while Sirius looked torn between pride and concern. "If you're sure, pup," he said finally, "then I'll support your decision. But promise me something." "What?" Harry asked. "Promise you'll still make time for Quidditch and pranks and all the normal wizard kid stuff. Don't let all this responsibility make you grow up too fast." Harry grinned. "I promise. Besides, the best pranks probably require advanced magic anyway." Sirius barked a laugh. "That's my godson." As the winter solstice approached, Harry prepared himself mentally for the commitment he was about to make. On the appointed day, he stood before the High Council in a ceremonial chamber deep beneath Gringotts, dressed in formal robes that blended wizard and goblin styles. "Harry James Potter," Ragnarok intoned, "do you freely choose to study the mysteries of the Goblin Nation, binding yourself to protect our secrets and honor our ways, even as you maintain your wizard heritage?" "I do so choose," Harry replied, the formal words carefully memorized. "Do you swear to use the knowledge granted to you in defense of both your peoples, never for conquest or corruption?" "I so swear." "Do you acknowledge that this path will forever alter your magic, creating bonds that transcend ordinary allegiance?" "I acknowledge and accept this transformation." Ragnarok approached, holding a small silver dagger. "Then let your blood seal your oath, and let the mysteries begin to open to you." Harry extended his hand without hesitation. Ragnar made a small cut on his palm, then pressed it against an ancient stone tablet covered in goblin runes. The moment his blood touched the stone, Harry felt a surge of magic unlike anything he'd experienced before, not violent or painful, but transformative, as if long-dormant pathways within his magical core were suddenly illuminated. The assembled goblins began to chant in an archaic dialect of gobbledygook too ancient for Harry to understand. The magic swirled around him, through him, reshaping subtle aspects of his connection to magical forces. When the ritual concluded, Harry stood changed in ways not visible to the eye but fundamental to his magical being. "The path is opened," Ragnar declared. "Let the teaching begin." As Harry left the ceremonial chamber, he found Griphook waiting with an expression of solemn pride. "How do you feel?" the goblin asked. Harry considered the question carefully. "Different. Like I can sense magic in new ways." He looked up at his guardian. "Like I truly belong to both worlds now." "You do," Griphook confirmed. "You have made history today, Harry Potter. The first bridge of true understanding between our peoples in centuries." "The first," Harry repeated thoughtfully, "but hopefully not the last." Unknown to either of them, deep in the Department of Mysteries at the Ministry of Magic, a prophecy orb glowed briefly before settling back into dormancy, its contents shifting subtly as the future realigned around the choices of a boy who now straddled two magical traditions. The path ahead remained uncertain, but Harry Potter had taken the first step toward a destiny neither purely wizard nor goblin, but something new entirely. Chapter 3, Confrontations and Reconciliations. The knife sliced through the air where Harry's head had been a half-second earlier. He dropped into a crouch, feeling the blade whistle overhead, then swept his leg in a goblin fighting technique that Black Fist had drilled into him relentlessly. His opponent, a training dummy enchanted with advanced movement charms, toppled sideways. Before it could recover, Harry pressed his advantage. He extended his hand, focusing his magic through intent rather than incantation, and the dummy froze in place. "Impressive timing," Black Fist grunted from the sidelines. "Your reflexes improve." 8-year-old Harry grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. The physical combat training remained his favorite part of his education, even as his magical studies delved deeper into both wizard and goblin traditions. "Again?" he asked hopefully. The goblin combat master shook his head. "You're expected in the Mysteries Chamber. Axebreaker doesn't tolerate tardiness." Harry winced. "Right. Thanks for reminding me." He grabbed a towel and hastily dried off, then hurried toward the deeper levels of Gringotts where his most secretive training took place. 6 months into his study of goblin mysteries, he still felt the thrill of forbidden knowledge each time he descended those ancient stairs. The Mysteries Chamber, a circular room with walls of bare stone inscribed with runes, contained only Master Axebreaker today, a female goblin whose age was impossible to determine but whose knowledge seemed limitless. "You're nearly late," she observed without looking up from the metal basin she stood before. "Sorry, Master," Harry replied, taking his position beside her. "Combat training ran long." "Your physical skills grow," she acknowledged. "And your magical core strengthens. Today we test your progress with the element of water." Harry straightened attentively. Goblin elemental magic differed fundamentally from wizard charms and transfiguration. Where wizards imposed their will upon elements, goblin magic involved communion with elemental forces, speaking to their essence rather than commanding them. "Water remembers," Axebreaker said, gesturing to the basin filled with clear liquid. "Unlike wizards who use water as a viewing medium through added ingredients, we connect directly to water's memory." Harry nodded, having studied the theory. Water flows everywhere, touching all things, and retains impressions of what it encounters. "Correct. Today you will attempt to access those memories." She gestured to the basin. "Place your hands on the surface. Do not break the tension. Connect your awareness to the element as we've practiced with stone." Harry approached carefully. Water magic was considered more challenging than the stone and metal work he'd begun with. He placed his palms just above the water's surface, careful not to touch it yet, and centered his breathing. The goblin mysteries had changed his magical awareness profoundly. Where once he'd felt magic as a simple internal force, now he perceived the unique magical signatures of elements and beings around him, like seeing new colors in a once familiar landscape. "Begin," Axebreaker instructed. Harry lowered his hands until they hovered just above the water's surface. He closed his eyes, extending his magical senses into the liquid below. Unlike wizard magic with its incantations and wand movements, this required a stillness of mind, a receptive awareness. "Water that flows," he murmured in gobbledygook, "share your journey's memory." At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, impressions formed in his mind, the dark confines of pipes, the rush through underground channels, the brief exposure to air before being collected in this basin. Further back, Axebreaker prompted. "Beyond Gringotts. Where was this water before?" Harry pushed deeper, his brow furrowing with concentration. The impressions shifted, becoming less distinct but more varied: rainfall on London streets, seepage through soil, evaporation from the Thames. "I see it," he whispered. "It was rain 3 days ago. Before that, river water. Before that," his connection suddenly deepened beyond anything he'd experienced before. The water's memories expanded explosively, stretching back weeks, months, years, carrying him through its endless cycle of evaporation, condensation, precipitation. Then, unexpectedly, he glimpsed something alarming: dark-robed figures gathered around a cauldron filled with this very water, extracted from a specific underground spring. They added ingredients that reeked of dark magic while chanting in Latin. "Blood of wizard, bone of ancestor, water of hidden places," a hoarse voice intoned. "Prepare the vessel for our Lord's return." Harry gasped, breaking the connection as he stumbled backward. The water in the basin rippled violently, then settled. "What did you see?" Axebreaker demanded, her typically impassive face showing concern. "People, wizards in dark robes," Harry managed, his heart racing. "Using water from a spring for some kind of ritual. They mentioned preparing a vessel for their Lord's return." Axebreaker's expression darkened. "When?" "I don't know exactly. The water's timeline is confusing. But recent, I think. Within the past month." "Did you recognize any participants?" Harry shook his head. "They wore masks. Silver masks. Death Eaters," Axebreaker hissed. "Followers of the Dark Wizard who killed your parents." Harry's blood ran cold. "Voldemort? They're trying to bring him back." "So it would seem." The Goblin Master moved swiftly toward the chamber door. "Come. Director Ragnarok must hear of this immediately." Sirius Black paced the length of Director Ragnarok's office, his expression thunderous. "You're telling me that Death Eaters are performing rituals to resurrect Voldemort, and we learned this through water?" "Through goblin water memory magic," Griphook corrected from his seat beside Harry. "A reliable divination method predating wizard scrying techniques by centuries." "That's not the point." Sirius exploded. "My godson is having visions of Death Eaters. This is exactly the kind of thing we wanted to protect him from." Harry watched the adults argue, feeling strangely calm despite the implications of what he'd seen. Perhaps it was the goblin training in emotional control, or perhaps the weight of his unusual life had prepared him for such revelations. "What matters," Ragnarok interjected firmly, "is not how we discovered this threat, but how we respond to it." "We should contact the Aurors," Sirius insisted. "And tell them what?" Griphook countered. "That Harry Potter had a vision through goblin magic. They would dismiss it as childish imagination, and we would reveal capabilities we prefer to keep private." "Then what do you suggest?" Sirius demanded. "Just wait until Voldemort returns and comes after Harry again." "No," Ragnarok said decisively. "We investigate ourselves. Gringotts has resources beyond the Ministry's reach, connections throughout the magical underground, intelligence networks across Europe. I want to help," Harry spoke up, drawing surprised looks from the adults. I saw it. I might recognize details if we find more information. Absolutely not, Sirius said immediately. Actually, Axebreaker said, speaking for the first time since delivering her report, the boy's connection to what he witnessed could prove valuable. Water memory creates magical links that might be useful in tracking the location. He's 8 years old. Sirius protested. Almost 9, Harry corrected automatically. Griphook cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise. Harry continues his training, including further exploration of water memory under strict supervision, while our investigators pursue conventional leads. And I want Dumbledore informed, Sirius added unexpectedly. The goblins stiffened. Despite the gradual thawing of relations over the past 3 years, the declaration of war against Dumbledore remained technically in effect. Why? Ragnarok asked sharply. Because whatever his faults, he knows more about Voldemort than anyone, Sirius replied. And because if Death Eaters are active again, Hogwarts might be at risk too. Ragnarok considered this, then nodded reluctantly. A limited briefing may be provided to Dumbledore. But our declaration stands. He receives information, not authority. I can accept that, Sirius agreed. As the adults continued discussing strategy, Harry's thoughts drifted back to the vision. There had been something familiar about one of the voices, though he couldn't place it. A cadence or accent that triggered recognition despite the mask. Master Axebreaker, he said suddenly, interrupting the ongoing debate, can I try the water memory again? There was something about one of the Death Eaters that seemed familiar. The Goblin Master studied him. Your magical core has expended considerable energy today already. A second attempt would be taxing. I can handle it, Harry insisted. This is important. After exchanging glances with Ragnarok, Axebreaker nodded. We will attempt a more controlled viewing. Director, if we might use your pensieve? The combination of wizard and goblin viewing techniques might provide clearer images. Ragnarok gestured to an ornate cabinet, which Griphook opened to reveal a stone basin similar to the one in the Mysteries Chamber, but inscribed with both goblin runes and wizard symbols. A collaborative artifact, Ragnarok explained to Sirius. Created during a brief period of wizard-goblin cooperation in the 15th century. Few remember it exists. Axebreaker directed Harry to stand before the pensieve while she added clear water from a silver pitcher. Focus on the memory, she instructed. But this time, I will guide your awareness. The pensieve will help externalize what you perceive. Harry nodded, placing his hands above the water as before. This time, however, Axebreaker stood directly behind him, her clawed hands resting lightly on his shoulders. Breathe, she commanded. Center. Extend. Harry closed his eyes, reconnecting with the water's memory. The process was easier this time, the pathway already established. He found the dark gathering quickly, focusing on the robed figures around the cauldron. The pensieve surface swirled, then projected a ghostly image above the basin, shadowy figures with silver masks in a dimly lit stone chamber. Listen to their voices, Axebreaker murmured. Focus on the one that seemed familiar. Harry concentrated, filtering through the chanting until he heard it again, a patrician drawl with distinctive emphasis on certain syllables. The vessel must be prepared by the solstice, the voice said. Our Lord's essence requires an anchor in this world before full resurrection becomes possible. Lucius Malfoy, Sirius breathed, recognizing the voice immediately. That's definitely Lucius. Harry opened his eyes, the projection vanishing as his concentration broke. Draco's father? The one who opposes my guardianship? The very same, Griphook confirmed grimly. A Death Eater who claimed Imperius coercion to escape punishment after the war. And now apparently helping orchestrate Voldemort's return, Ragnarok concluded. This changes our approach significantly. How so? Sirius asked. Lucius Malfoy holds considerable influence in the Ministry, the director explained. Going through official channels would alert him to our knowledge. Not to mention his son Draco is set to attend Hogwarts alongside Harry in a few years, Griphook added. Harry frowned. I haven't even met him yet. Count yourself fortunate, Sirius muttered. The Malfoys have been poisoning wizard politics for generations. This revelation necessitates immediate security adjustments, Ragnarok decided. Harry's public appearances must be limited. His training accelerated. And our intelligence gathering focused on Malfoy's activities. I should take Harry to my home, Sirius suggested. The Black family protections are formidable but known to former Death Eaters who married into your family, Griphook interrupted. Narcissa Malfoy was born a Black. She may know vulnerabilities. Then where? Sirius demanded. He remains here, Ragnarok stated firmly. Gringotts' defenses exceed any wizard dwelling. No Death Eater has successfully breached our lower levels in over 6 centuries. And Gringotts' travel restrictions will be waived for you, Lord Black, Griphook added diplomatically. You may stay in adjoining quarters if you wish. The tension in Sirius's shoulders eased slightly. That would be acceptable. Harry, who had been listening attentively, spoke up again. What about Neville? And the Weasleys? If Malfoy knows I'm friends with them. The adults exchanged concerned glances. A valid point, Griphook acknowledged. We should warn Augusta Longbottom at minimum. The Weasleys too, Sirius insisted. Arthur may work for the Ministry, but he's no friend to Lucius Malfoy. Discreet warnings only, Ragnarok cautioned. We cannot risk broader exposure of our intelligence methods. As the meeting concluded with assignments for various investigations, Harry found himself both frightened and oddly exhilarated. The threat was real, but so was his ability to help counter it. His unique magical training, the Goblin mysteries combined with his wizard heritage, had revealed information no other source could have provided. Harry, Sirius said quietly as they left Ragnarok's office, I know that look on your face. It's the same one your father got when he was plotting something dangerous. Harry tried to look innocent. I'm not plotting anything. Aha. Sirius was clearly unconvinced. Just remember our deal. You promised not to grow up too fast, remember? Leave the Death Eater hunting to the adults. I know, Harry assured him. But I can still help with the water memory magic. Nobody else can do that the way I can. Sirius sighed, draping an arm around Harry's shoulders. That's what worries me, pup. You're already too special for your own good. In a manor house nestled among rolling Wiltshire hills, Lucius Malfoy examined his reflection in an ornate mirror, adjusting the high collar of his formal robes. The ministry function tonight would provide perfect cover for a brief meeting with sympathetic department heads, another step in his careful consolidation of influence. The soft pop of apparition from the adjoining room drew his attention. No one should have been able to bypass the manor's wards. Dobby, he called sharply, assuming his house elf had made the noise. When no response came, he drew his wand and moved cautiously toward the door. Before he reached it, a familiar voice spoke from behind. Your security needs improvement, Lucius. He spun around, wand raised, to find Albus Dumbledore sitting calmly in his favorite armchair. How did you get past your wards? Dumbledore supplied mildly. The Malfoy defenses are impressive, but I helped design the standard British warding system during the Grindelwald conflict. I notice you've made only superficial modifications. Lucius lowered his wand slightly, though his grip remained tight. Breaking and entering, Headmaster. How the mighty have fallen. The Board of Governors might find this behavior concerning. I doubt you'll be informing them, Dumbledore replied, his tone pleasant but his eyes hard. Not when the purpose of my visit concerns certain extracurricular activities of yours. I have no idea what you're talking about, Lucius responded automatically. No. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. No midnight gatherings. No ancient rituals involving cauldrons and masks. No discussions of vessels and solstices. The color drained from Lucius's face, though his expression remained carefully neutral. Fantasies. You have no proof of anything. Perhaps not the kind admissible in the Wisengamot, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though that could change rapidly should certain financial investigations begin. Gringotts takes a dim view of accounts used to fund dark rituals. Malfoy's jaw tightened at the mention of Gringotts. The goblins' overreach. Their influence over the Potter boy is an abomination that will be corrected in time. Ah, so we come to the heart of the matter, Dumbledore said. Harry Potter. The boy whose guardianship you've opposed so vehemently in the Wisengamot. One might wonder about your particular interest in his living arrangements. Any right-thinking wizard would oppose allowing goblins to raise a wizard child, Lucius snapped. Particularly one of Potter's significance. Indeed. And your interest couldn't possibly relate to your former master's designs on the boy. Malfoy's knuckles whitened around his wand. You forget yourself, Dumbledore. Your influence wanes daily. Your precious order disbanded. Your political position stripped away one by one. And yet here I sit in your private study, uninvited. Dumbledore smiled thinly. My influence may have diminished, but my capabilities remain intact. He rose smoothly, causing Lucius to take an involuntary step backward. Consider this a courtesy warning, Lucius. Whatever you and your associates are planning regarding Lord Voldemort's return will fail. The boy is protected beyond your ability to penetrate. And now, we are watching more closely than ever. We. Malfoy sneered. You're alone, old man. The Ministry considers you compromised. The goblins have declared war against you. Your own deputy runs Hogwarts in all but name. Assumptions can be dangerous, Dumbledore replied enigmatically. As can underestimating unexpected alliances. He moved toward the door, then paused. One final thought, Lucius. Consider the fate of those who failed Voldemort the first time. Ask yourself if his gratitude for your current efforts would outweigh his displeasure at your years of comfortable freedom while he suffered in exile. With that parting comment, Dumbledore disappeared with a soft crack of apparition, leaving Lucius alone with deeply unsettling thoughts. After several minutes of tense silence, he strode to his desk and penned 3 identical messages, each bearing the same brief instruction: plans compromised. Accelerate timetable. Meeting location Beta, midnight. Harry woke to urgent voices outside his bedroom door. Living in Gringotts for over 3 years had taught him to distinguish between normal bank business and genuine emergencies. The sharp, rapid gobbledygook being spoken now definitely qualified as the latter. He slipped from bed and pressed his ear to the door. Attacked the Longbottom estate, a voice he recognized as Bloodfangs reported. Wards breached at multiple points. Augusta Longbottom and the boy have been evacuated to Ministry-safe rooms. Harry's heart leapt to his throat. Neville? Attacked? Coordination suggests inside knowledge of the defenses, Griphook responded. Was anyone injured? Minor wounds only. The Longbottom security trolls delayed the intruders long enough for aura response. And the timing? Griphook pressed. Too convenient to be coincidence. Agreed. Less than 48 hours after we warned Augusta about potential Death Eater activities. They're monitoring our communications somehow, Griphook concluded. Or the Longbottom household has been compromised. Unable to remain silent any longer, Harry opened his door. Both goblins turned sharply, clearly surprised to find him awake. Is Neville okay? He demanded. Griphook recovered first. Mr. Longbottom is safe, Harry. The attack was repelled before the intruders reached the main house. But they attacked because of me, Harry said, connecting the dots immediately. Because Neville's my friend. The goblins exchanged glances. It's possible, Bloodfang acknowledged. Though the Longbottoms have their own enemies from the last war. I need to see him, Harry insisted. To make sure he's all right. Impossible at present, Griphook stated firmly. The Ministry has established security protocols. No outside contact until they complete their investigation. Harry's expression hardened with determination. Then contact Madame Longbottom directly. Tell her I need to speak with Neville. She trusts us. Harry, Griphook began, his tone warning. Please, Harry interrupted. If it was my fault they were attacked, I need to know Neville's okay. Directly from him. The desperation in his voice must have been convincing. After a moment, Griphook nodded to Bloodfang. Attempt secure communication with Augusta Longbottom. Goblin channels only, nothing that could be intercepted by wizard means. While Bloodfang hurried away, Griphook ushered Harry back into his room. You should not have been eavesdropping on sensitive information. It's about my friend, Harry countered. And possibly because of me. I have a right to know. Griphook sighed, a surprisingly human gesture from the typically reserved goblin. Your wizard guardian's influence shows in your argumentation style. Very well. The situation appears to be this: approximately 3 hours ago, masked wizards attempted to breach Longbottom Manor's defenses. Their objective remains unclear, but their method suggests Death Eater involvement. Did they leave any message? Any demands? None reported, Griphook replied. Though magical forensics is ongoing. Harry paced his room, thinking furiously. It has to be connected to what I saw in the water memory. To Malfoy and whatever they're planning with Voldemort. The timing supports that theory, Griphook agreed. Though we lack definitive proof. What about the Weasleys? Have they been warned? Enhanced security measures were implemented at the Burrow yesterday. Arthur Weasley accepted our concerns with remarkable seriousness. Harry nodded, relieved. And serious? Is he safe? Lord Black is currently at Hogwarts, consulting with Headmaster Dumbledore under diplomatic arrangement. The castle's protections exceed even Gringotts in some respects. The revelation that Sirius and Dumbledore were working together surprised Harry, though he supposed extraordinary circumstances warranted unusual alliances. What about other people I know? Remus Lupin? Hagrid? Griphook's expression softened slightly at Harry's concern for others. All known associates have been discreetly warned or protected. Director Ragnarok has activated our full security network. A knock at the door interrupted them. Bloodfang returned, looking grave. Madame Longbottom agrees to limited communication. She's established a secure flow connection to their ministry safe room, available for 3 minutes maximum. Harry rushed to the fireplace in his sitting room as Griphook activated the connection. The flames turned green, and Augusta Longbottom's stern face appeared. Mr. Potter, she greeted, her usual formality intact despite the circumstances. Neville will be with you momentarily. I trust you understand the need for brevity. Yes, ma'am, Harry replied quickly. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Augusta's face disappeared, replaced seconds later by Neville's round one, looking shaken but determined. Harry. Are you okay? Neville asked immediately. Me? I'm fine. You're the one who was attacked. Harry exclaimed. Are you hurt? Neville shook his head. Just scared. Gran was amazing though. She dueled 2 of them at once while we escaped. What happened exactly? We were asleep when the wards triggered alarms, Neville explained. Gran had us prepared, bags packed, emergency port keys ready. Standard procedure, she said, after your warning. We activated our escape plan while the security trolls engaged the intruders. Did you see who they were? Masked. Silver masks, just like you described from your vision. Neville's voice dropped lower. Harry, one of them called out my name specifically. They were looking for me. Harry's blood ran cold. Because you're my friend. Maybe. Or maybe because of my parents. Neville's parents had been tortured into insanity by Death Eaters after Voldemort's fall, a tragedy he rarely discussed. Either way, Gran says we need to be extra careful now. 30 seconds, Augusta's voice warned from somewhere off-screen. Neville, listen, Harry said urgently. They might try again. Remember the wandless magic we've been practicing? The goblin techniques? Neville nodded. Keep practicing. Every day. It might help if things get worse. I will, Neville promised. The focusing exercises help with my magic anyway. Gran's noticed improvement. Time's up, Augusta announced, reappearing beside Neville. Mr. Potter, thank you for your concern. Please inform your guardians that we will be relocating to our continental property until additional security measures can be implemented at the manor. Yes, ma'am, Harry acknowledged. Please stay safe. The connection terminated, leaving Harry staring at normal flames once more. Continental property, he asked Griphook. The Longbottoms maintain a chateau in southern France, the goblin explained. Unplottable and unknown to most British wizards. A wise precaution. Harry nodded absently, his mind racing. They targeted Neville specifically. Called him by name. Concerning, Griphook agreed. Though whether because of his connection to you or his own family history remains unclear. What if it's both? Harry suggested. What if they're targeting people connected to Voldemort's fall? That would explain why they went after Neville when they couldn't get to me. Griphook looked thoughtful. An interesting theory. We should inform Director Ragnarok. As they headed toward Ragnarok's office, Harry felt a growing certainty that events were accelerating beyond anyone's control. 3 years of safety, of learning and growth under goblin and wizard protection, had perhaps lulled him into false security. The shadow of Voldemort, never truly gone, was lengthening once more. The next week passed in a whirlwind of increased security and intensive training. Harry found his schedule packed with additional combat lessons, accelerated mysteries training, and practical defensive magic. Again, Black Fist barked as Harry picked himself up from the training mat for the 10th time that morning. Your enemy won't allow you recovery time. Harry wiped blood from his lip and reset his stance, facing the goblin warrior with determined focus. These sessions had intensified dramatically, no longer practice but preparation for real combat. Across the chamber, Sirius watched with mixed pride and concern. Since returning from Hogwarts, he'd barely left Harry's side, even sleeping in adjoining quarters rather than returning to his own home. Isn't this a bit much? He muttered to Griphook as Black Fist sent Harry tumbling again with a sweeping kick. He's still a child. A child being hunted by dark wizards, Griphook replied quietly. Would you prefer he be unprepared when they inevitably find a way to reach him? Sirius had no answer for that. The evidence gathered over the past week painted an alarming picture, coordinated Death Eater activity across Britain, targeting not just Harry's associates but anyone connected to Voldemort's original defeat. The McKinnons, whose family had been decimated in the First War, had narrowly escaped an attack on their safe house. Emmeline Vance, a former Order member, had been hospitalized after a random assault in Diagon Alley. Even Hogwarts had increased security after suspicious individuals were spotted testing the boundaries of the school's protective wards. He's adapting well, Griphook observed as Harry successfully blocked Blackfist's next attack sequence. His reflexes improve daily. He shouldn't have to adapt to this, Sirius said bitterly. James and Lily sacrificed themselves so he could have a normal childhood. There was never any possibility of normal for Harry Potter, Griphook stated matter-of-factly. His survival marked him irrevocably. Our guardianship merely gave him tools to face what was always coming. Before Sirius could respond, the chamber door burst open, and Bloodfang rushed in. Attack in progress, he reported breathlessly. The burrow. Death Eaters breached the outer wards. Harry, overhearing, immediately abandoned his training match. The Weasleys? Are they okay? Defensive measures holding, Bloodfang replied. But reinforcements needed urgently. Sirius was already moving toward the door. I'm going. Contact the Aurors if you haven't already. Wait. Harry called. I'm coming too. Absolutely not, Sirius and Griphook said in unison. The Weasleys are my friends, Harry protested. And this is happening because of me. Which is precisely why you must remain here, Griphook stated firmly. You are the primary target. Presenting yourself would only escalate the situation. But, no arguments, pup, Sirius said, his tone gentler but equally unyielding. The best way you can help the Weasleys is by staying safe while we deal with this. Harry watched helplessly as Sirius departed with several goblin security specialists. The sense of uselessness, of being protected while others faced danger on his behalf, burned like acid in his stomach. This isn't right, he muttered, pacing the training chamber. I should be doing something. You are, Blackfist said unexpectedly. You train. You prepare. You become stronger. For what? To hide better while my friends get attacked. To survive, the Goblin Master replied bluntly. To fight when the time is right. That time is not today. Harry knew the Goblin was right, but the knowledge did nothing to ease his frustration. After 3 years of intensive education, wizard and goblin alike, he possessed magical abilities far beyond most children his age. Yet when real danger threatened, he remained sidelined. Come, Griphook directed, breaking into his thoughts. We should move to the secure levels until we receive word from the burrow. Harry followed reluctantly, his mind still churning with worry for the Weasley family, especially Ron, Fred, and George, who had become friends during various visits. The secure levels of Gringotts lay far beneath the bank's public areas, ancient chambers carved from bedrock and warded with layered protections developed over centuries. Few wizards even knew of their existence. As they descended, Harry felt the familiar pressure of defensive magic washing over him. Here, even the air felt different, dense with protective enchantments that recognized and admitted only those authorized by the goblin hierarchy. Will we know if something happens? Harry asked as they entered a comfortable but clearly fortified sitting room. If someone gets hurt? We've established communication channels, Griphook assured him. News will reach us promptly. Harry nodded, then settled into restless waiting. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2, with no word from the burrow. Something's wrong, he finally declared, unable to contain his anxiety any longer. They should have sent news by now. Griphook, who had been reviewing security scrolls, looked up with a frown. The communications delay is concerning. I'll request, a sharp crack interrupted him as a house elf appeared in the center of the room, not a Gringotts elf, but one wearing a pillowcase emblazoned with the Black family crest. Creature comes with urgent message for Master Harry Potter, the ancient elf announced with obvious distaste. Blood Trader Master says to tell you, trap sprung, targets diverted, real attack elsewhere. Harry's blood ran cold. The burrow was a diversion. Then where's the real attack? Creature's bloodshot eyes gleamed maliciously. Blood Trader Master says they come here. They break the bank. Griphook was already moving, activating an alarm crystal on the wall. Full lockdown, he barked into it in gobbledygook. Breach imminent. How? Harry demanded. Gringotts is supposed to be impenetrable. Nothing is truly impenetrable with sufficient inside information, Griphook replied grimly. And the Death Eater's resources have clearly been underestimated. The room shuddered as powerful wards activated throughout the bank. In the distance, Harry heard the rumble of stone doors sealing and the metallic clang of security gates dropping into place. Should we move deeper? He asked, already calculating escape routes as his training had taught him. Griphook shook his head. No time. The secure levels are already isolated. We maintain position and prepare for defense. You said they were coming here, to the bank. But they can't possibly reach these levels, can they? Before Griphook could answer, Creature cackled unpleasantly. Ancient ways exist, young master. Black family knows secrets of the deep places. Mistress Narcissa remembers. Harry's eyes widened in realization. Narcissa Malfoy. She's Sirius's cousin, she would know Black family secrets about Gringotts. Unlikely, Griphook insisted, though his expression betrayed concern. The Black family vaults are well protected, but they don't connect to the secure levels. Unless, Harry said slowly, remembering something from his goblin history lessons, they use the Thief's Downfall bypass created during the Goblin Rebellion of 1612. The one that was supposedly sealed but actually just hidden. Griphook stared at him in shock. How do you know about that? That information is restricted to senior security goblins. I read about it in the Historical Security Breaches volume you gave me last year, Harry explained. It mentioned that the Black family discovered the bypass during the rebellion but kept the knowledge secret as leverage. The goblin's expression darkened. An oversight in your educational materials. That text should have been redacted. Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger this time. That felt like expansion charms, Harry noted, recognizing the magical signature from his training. Someone's widening passages not meant for human access. Creature's ears twitched. They come through the old ways. Mistress taught Mistress Narcissa well. How long until help arrives? Harry asked, moving to retrieve his emergency pack, a goblin-crafted bag containing essential survival tools that he'd been trained to keep ready. The diversion at the burrow drew away our primary security forces, Griphook said grimly. And standard lockdown protocols seal the bank entirely. We're isolated until override procedures can be implemented. So we're on our own, Harry concluded, opening his pack to check its contents, healing potions, defensive talismans, and a small silver dagger for channeling goblin magic. The secure levels remain defended, Griphook reminded him. Multiple wards, guardian constructs, trapped corridors. Another violent shake interrupted him, followed by a distant but distinct sound of stone cracking. They're breaking through faster than should be possible, Griphook muttered, moving to a concealed panel in the wall. He pressed his palm against it, revealing a hidden cabinet containing weapons, swords, axes, and other distinctly goblin armaments. Master Harry Potter should hide, Creature suggested with unconvincing concern. Creature can show secret places even goblins don't know. No, Harry said firmly. I'm done hiding while others fight my battles. He turned to Griphook. I can help. The mysteries training, the combat lessons, they weren't just academic, were they? You've been preparing me for this. Griphook hesitated, then nodded once. Not specifically this scenario, but yes, practical application was always the intent. He selected a short sword from the cabinet and offered it to Harry. You've trained with similar weapons. Harry took the blade, feeling its perfect balance, goblin-forged metal that seemed to connect with his magical core through the goblin mysteries he'd been taught. It felt right in his hand, an extension of himself rather than a separate tool. Creature, he addressed the house elf, who watched with calculating eyes. Return to Sirius. Tell him exactly where we are and what's happening. Tell him to bring help through the main entrance once the diversion is contained. The ancient elf looked conflicted, clearly torn between contradictory loyalties. Finally, he nodded. Creature will deliver the message to Blood Trader Master. And Creature, Harry added as the elf prepared to disappear, thank you for the warning. Surprise flashed across the elf's wrinkled face before he vanished with a crack. Alone with Griphook, Harry took a deep breath and centered himself as his goblin training had taught him. What's the plan? Defense in layers, Griphook replied, donning light armor from the cabinet. We are currently in Secure Chamber 8. Access requires passing through 3 warded gates from any direction. We monitor breaches and prepare countermeasures. As if on cue, a crystal on the wall flashed red. Outer perimeter breached, Griphook translated. They've reached the secure levels. Harry gripped his sword tighter. How many do you think? Based on magical signatures. Griphook studied another monitoring crystal. 5, possibly 6 wizards. Substantial firepower. Death Eaters, Harry murmured. Coming for me. They will not succeed, Griphook stated with absolute certainty. Even if they breach this chamber, they would need to overcome both of us to capture you. Harry managed a small smile at his guardian's confidence. I've had 3 years of goblin combat training. They're expecting an 8-year-old wizard child. Precisely. Griphook's sharp-toothed smile held no humor. Underestimation is a fatal error in both business and battle. The next hour passed in tense preparation. Each crystal flash indicated another defense breached, another layer of protection overcome. Harry and Griphook moved furniture to create defensive positions, prepared magical countermeasures, and reviewed combat signals developed during their training sessions. When the final crystal flashed, indicating breach of the last gate before their chamber, Griphook positioned himself beside the reinforced door. They will attempt magical entry first, he predicted. Standard unlocking charms, then progressively more destructive spells. Harry nodded, taking position behind an overturned stone table. His heart pounded, but his mind remained remarkably clear, the result of goblin meditation techniques practiced daily for years. The expected spell barrage began moments later. The door glowed with various colors as different charms struck its surface, testing for weaknesses. Harry recognized the magical signatures of several spells from his defensive training. Alohomora, he muttered, identifying the basic unlocking charm. Followed by Aberto, then something stronger. Bombarda maybe? Griphook nodded approvingly at his analysis. They progress methodically. Disciplined attackers. A particularly violent spell impact shook the entire door, causing dust to drift from the ceiling. That was Confringo, Harry identified. Blasting curse. They grow impatient, Griphook observed. Good. Impatience breeds mistakes. The next impact was different, not a spell but physical force. The unmistakable sound of an axe striking metal echoed through the chamber. Magically enhanced weapon, Griphook noted. They've realized standard spells are ineffective. 3 more powerful strikes rang out, each causing the door to buckle slightly inward. On the 4th strike, the locking mechanism failed, and the door crashed open. 2 masked figures stood in the doorway, Death Eaters in flowing black robes and silver masks, wands extended. Behind them, Harry glimpsed 3 more similarly attired attackers. The boy, one commanded in a harsh voice. Secure the boy. Kill the goblin. Several things happened simultaneously. Griphook hurled a handful of metal spheres that exploded into blinding light. Harry rolled from behind his cover, goblin sword in hand. The Death Eaters fired spells that shattered against hastily raised shields. The chamber erupted into chaos. Harry moved as his training dictated, never staying still, utilizing cover, attacking only when advantageous. The Death Eaters, momentarily disoriented by Griphook's flash bombs, fired spells wildly. Stupefy. Incarcerus. Crucio. The last spell, an unforgivable, missed Harry by inches, striking the wall behind him with sizzling force. We need him alive, one Death Eater shouted. Alive doesn't mean uninjured, another responded, redirecting his wand toward Harry's legs. Defindo. Harry dove behind a stone column as the cutting curse sliced through the air. He pressed his palm against the floor, channeling goblin earth magic as Axebreaker had taught him, and sent a pulse of energy through the stone. The floor beneath 2 Death Eaters rippled like water, throwing them off balance. Griphook capitalized immediately, engaging one with his battle axe while Harry targeted the other with a wandless disarming charm, one of the few wizard spells he could perform reliably without a wand. Expelliarmus. The Death Eater's wand flew from his grasp, leaving him momentarily defenseless. Harry pressed his advantage, rushing forward with his sword raised. The boy knows goblin magic, someone shouted in alarm. Malfoy didn't warn us. Harry faltered briefly at the confirmation of Lucius Malfoy's involvement, which nearly cost him dearly. A spell grazed his shoulder, tearing his robe and burning his skin beneath. He recovered quickly, ducking behind another column and assessing the situation. Griphook had disabled one attacker but was now fighting defensively against two others. The wandless Death Eater had retrieved his wand and was circling toward Harry's position. "Potter!" The lead Death Eater called out. "Surrender and we'll spare your goblin pet. Fight, and we'll make you watch as we gut him." Harry's response was to press his hand against the column, channeling magic into the stone. Goblin earth magic relied on communication with elements rather than dominance over them, asking rather than commanding. "Stone that guards," he whispered in gobbledygook, "protect your allies." The column shuddered, then abruptly extruded stone spikes in all directions like a massive porcupine. The Death Eaters scrambled backward to avoid impalement, giving Harry the opening he needed. He dashed from cover, sword in his left hand while his right remained free for wandless magic. As one Death Eater turned toward him, Harry gestured sharply. "Lumos Maxima." The wandless spell wasn't particularly powerful, but directed straight at the islets of the silver mask, it achieved its purpose. The Death Eater cried out, temporarily blinded, allowing Harry to close distance and strike with the flat of his blade against the man's knee. Bone cracked audibly, and the Death Eater collapsed with a howl of pain. Across the chamber, Griphook had maneuvered one opponent into a trap, a pressure plate that, when triggered, released a cascade of goblin-forged chains from the ceiling. The Death Eater struggled futilely as the magical restraints tightened around him. That left 3 attackers still active, 2 focused on Griphook, 1 advancing on Harry. "Enough games," the lead Death Eater snarled, raising his wand. Crucio. Harry dove aside, but the torture curse clipped his leg. White-hot agony lanced through his body, causing him to drop his sword and fall to his knees. Though the contact had been brief, the pain was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Through watering eyes, he saw the Death Eater advance, wand still trained on him. Behind the silver mask, cold eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "The Dark Lord will be pleased," the man said softly. The famous Harry Potter, delivered as promised. Imperio. The Imperius curse struck Harry full force. A wonderful floating sensation replaced the lingering pain, along with a voice in his head urging compliance. "Come quietly. Follow me. Drop your defenses." For a moment, Harry felt himself rising, ready to obey. Then his goblin training activated, mental disciplines designed specifically to maintain control under magical influence. "Stone stands firm," he murmured, the goblin mantra anchoring his will. "Water flows around obstacles. Fire consumes that which feeds it. Air yields but never breaks." The floating sensation receded, replaced by his own determination. The Death Eater, not realizing his curse had failed, lowered his guard slightly. "That's right, boy. Come along now." Harry lunged forward with unexpected speed, scooping up his fallen sword and driving it into the Death Eater's thigh. The man screamed, the Imperius connection shattering completely. "Incarcerus!" Harry shouted, channeling the spell through his free hand. Ropes materialized, binding the wounded Death Eater before he could recover. The chamber had become a battlefield of small victories and defeats. Griphook had disabled another attacker but sustained injuries himself, a deep gash across his chest and what appeared to be a broken arm. The final Death Eater, realizing the situation had deteriorated, made a desperate decision. "Fiend fire," he bellowed, slashing his wand in a complex pattern. Cursed fire erupted from his wand tip, a writhing serpent of flame that grew rapidly, consuming everything in its path. Harry recognized the deadly spell from his theoretical defense lessons with Sirius. "Griphook," he shouted in warning. "Fiend fire." The goblin's eyes widened in alarm. "The chamber won't hold it. We need to evacuate." But the doorway was blocked by the advancing fire serpent, which had already consumed one of the fallen Death Eaters. The others were retreating through a side passage, abandoning their comrades to the inferno. Harry's mind raced. Normal water magic wouldn't affect cursed fire. Containment might be possible, but he lacked the power to establish a sufficient barrier. Then he remembered, water memory magic. The advanced technique Master Axebreaker had been teaching him. Grip hook. The emergency cooling system, can you activate it? Understanding dawned in the goblin's eyes. The secure chambers had built-in safeguards against fire, including reservoirs of magically treated water in the ceiling. Griphook limped to a control panel and pressed his bloodied hand against it. Activation requires goblin blood freely given, he explained as the panel glowed in recognition. Sprinklers in the ceiling released cascades of water, not enough to extinguish fiend fire directly, but providing Harry with the element he needed for his plan. He raised both hands toward the falling water, calling upon the deepest goblin mysteries he had been taught. Water that flows, remember your nature, he chanted in ancient gobbledygook. Remember the primordial deep, when fire was yet unborn. The water responded, its molecular memory extending beyond its current state to what water had been in the earliest days of creation, before fire existed, before the elements had fully separated. The droplets around Harry began to glow with blue-white light, absorbing the magical principle of pre-fire existence. As they fell into contact with the fiend fire, the cursed flames hissed and recoiled as if encountering their antithesis. Containment pattern, Harry gasped, the complex magic draining his strength rapidly. Circle and constrict. The glowing water formed a ring around the fiend fire, gradually tightening like a noose. The cursed flames fought viciously, sending tendrils of fire in all directions seeking escape. Harry's vision blurred from the effort, but he maintained concentration. This was what all his training had prepared him for, not just combat or defense, but the application of unique magical principles that transcended standard wizard limitations. With a final surge of will, he closed his hands into fists, and the water circle contracted sharply. The fiend fire imploded with a sound like a thunderclap, leaving behind only wisps of steam and the charred remains of whatever it had consumed. Harry collapsed to his knees, magically exhausted. Griphook limped to his side, supporting him with his uninjured arm. Extraordinary, the goblin murmured. No wizard has successfully countered fiend fire with water memory magic in recorded history. Harry managed a weak smile. First time for everything. Their moment of victory was short-lived. Shouts and the sound of running footsteps echoed from the corridor outside, reinforcements, but whether friend or foe remained uncertain. Griphook positioned himself protectively in front of Harry, axe raised despite his injuries. Can you fight if necessary? If I must, Harry replied, though in truth he doubted he could stand unaided, let alone continue battle. The footsteps grew louder, then Sirius Black burst through the doorway, wand extended and expression fierce. Behind him came a squad of goblin warriors and, surprisingly, Albus Dumbledore. Harry! Sirius cried upon seeing his godson's condition. He rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside the boy. Are you hurt? What happened? Death Eaters, Harry managed. 5 or 6. We stopped them. Dumbledore surveyed the chamber with evident amazement, taking in the stone spikes protruding from the column, the bound and injured Death Eaters, and the distinctive magical residue of extinguished fiend fire. You did this? He asked softly. The two of you alone. Griphook straightened proudly despite his wounds. Harry Potter is no ordinary wizard child, headmaster. As these attackers discovered to their detriment. Goblin security forces moved efficiently through the chamber, securing prisoners and examining magical traces. Healers attended to Griphook's injuries while Sirius refused to leave Harry's side. The Weasleys? Harry asked anxiously. Are they okay? Safe, Sirius assured him. The attack on the burrow was indeed a diversion. Once we realized that, we redirected here immediately. Though not quickly enough, it seems, Dumbledore observed, approaching Harry with newfound respect in his eyes. You had already resolved the situation most impressively. Harry studied the old wizard who had once controlled his life so disastrously. 3 years under the declaration of war had changed Dumbledore. He seemed humbler, less assured of his own infallibility. "We did what we had to," Harry said simply. "Griphook and I protect each other. That's what family does." Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly at the word family, but he nodded in acknowledgement. "Indeed. A lesson I learned too late with regard to your care." He glanced at the captured Death Eaters. "These attackers will provide valuable intelligence about Voldemort's reported resurrection attempts." "Malfoy's involved," Harry offered. "They mentioned him specifically." "Lucius will find his position considerably weakened by this failure," Dumbledore noted with satisfaction. "Particularly when his associates begin talking under Veritaserum." As goblin healers examined Harry for injuries, Director Ragnarok arrived, his expression transitioning from concern to fierce pride upon learning what had transpired. "The High Council will hear of this," he told Harry. "Your application of the mysteries against Fiendfire sets a precedent that will be studied for generations." "I just didn't want to get burned," Harry replied with a tired smile. "Or let Griphook get burned either." Ragnarok turned to Dumbledore, his demeanor cooling noticeably. "Headmaster. Your assistance in this matter is noted. As is the extraordinary competence of Gringotts security," Dumbledore replied diplomatically. "And the remarkable abilities of young Mr. Potter under goblin tutelage." Something shifted in their exchange, not friendship, exactly, but a thawing of the absolute hostility that had characterized their interactions since the declaration of war. "Perhaps," Ragnarok said carefully, "recent events warrant reconsideration of certain positions." Dumbledore inclined his head. "I would welcome such discussions, Director. When appropriate parties are recovered and matters stabilized." Harry, watching this exchange through exhausted eyes, recognized its significance. The possibility of peace between Dumbledore and the Goblin Nation seemed suddenly more than theoretical. "Can we go home now?" he asked Sirius and Griphook. "I'm really tired." Both guardians moved to help him stand, then exchanged glances when they realized they'd acted in perfect synchronization. "Yes," they replied in unison. "Let's go home." News of the Death Eater attack on Gringotts, and its astonishing defeat by an 8-year-old wizard and his goblin guardian, spread through magical Britain like fiendfire through dry timber. The Daily Prophet's headline screamed, "Boy Who defeats Death Eaters with goblin magic, Malfoy implicated in plot to resurrect you-know-who." For once, the newspaper's sensationalism barely exceeded reality. Detailed accounts from Ministry interrogations of the captured attackers confirmed the worst fears. A coordinated effort to resurrect Voldemort had been underway, with Harry Potter intended as a key component in the final ritual. Lucius Malfoy, implicated by multiple testimonies, had fled the country before Aurors arrived at Malfoy Manor. His wife Narcissa and son Draco remained, insisting they had no knowledge of his activities. In the aftermath, Harry found himself simultaneously celebrated as a hero and scrutinized for his unprecedented magical abilities. The revelation that he could perform elements of goblin magic, previously believed impossible for wizards, sparked intense debate in magical academic circles. "They're calling for research studies," Sirius told him with a mixture of amusement and concern as they sat in the garden of Grimmauld Place. "Half the Department of Mysteries wants to examine you." Harry, still recovering from magical exhaustion a week after the attack, shrugged. "They can want whatever they like. I'm not a laboratory specimen." "Well said," Griphook approved from nearby, where he was reviewing security reports. The goblin's injuries had healed quickly under expert care, though he still favored his formerly broken arm slightly. "The real question," Sirius continued more seriously, "is what happens now. The attack changes everything, politically, educationally, everything." Harry leaned back in his chair, considering this. "The Death Eaters know what I can do now. If Voldemort ever does come back, he'll be prepared." "Perhaps," Griphook acknowledged. "But preparation requires understanding. Your unique combination of wizard and goblin magic remains fundamentally unprecedented, difficult to counter without similar training." Speaking of training, Sirius interjected, Dumbledore has requested a formal meeting to discuss your future education. In light of recent events, he believes specialized instruction at Hogwarts might be appropriate before your official enrollment. Harry raised his eyebrows. Is that even possible? I'm not 11 yet. Exceptions have been made historically for extraordinary circumstances, Griphook noted. Though none precisely like yours. And what about the declaration of war? Harry asked. Is that still in effect? His guardians exchanged meaningful glances. That, Sirius said carefully, is part of what the meeting would address. There's talk of a formal reconciliation process, a magical tribunal to assess Dumbledore's original actions regarding your placement and his subsequent efforts at restitution. Harry considered this thoughtfully. The idea of formal closure to the conflict that had shaped his early years held undeniable appeal. Yet he remained wary of Dumbledore's motivations. Would I have to testify? About the cupboard and everything? Only if you wish to, Griphook assured him. Your previous statements are already part of the official record. And as your guardians, we could represent your interests if you preferred not to attend. Harry shook his head immediately. No. If they're going to talk about me, I want to be there. I want to speak for myself. Pride flickered in both guardians' expressions. Just like your mother, Sirius said softly. She never let anyone else speak for her either. The following week brought the formal announcement of a magical reconciliation tribunal, an ancient procedure rarely invoked, designed to resolve conflicts between magical beings when standard legal processes proved inadequate. The tribunal would assess Albus Dumbledore's actions regarding Harry Potter's guardianship, the subsequent Goblin declaration of war, and the terms under which that conflict might be resolved. Given the parties involved, it would take place at a neutral location, the International Confederation of Wizards headquarters in Geneva. As the date approached, Harry found himself increasingly reflective about the strange journey that had brought him to this point. From a neglected, abused child in a cupboard to a uniquely educated wizard-goblin hybrid who had defeated Death Eaters with magic most people didn't know existed. Nervous? Neville asked as they walked through the Longbottom greenhouses the day before the tribunal. The Longbottom family had returned from France once the immediate Death Eater threat had been contained. A little, Harry admitted. It's weird to think about seeing Dumbledore in that setting, not as an enemy exactly, but not as a friend either. Neville nodded thoughtfully. Gran says he's changed since everything happened with you. More willing to listen, less convinced he's always right. That's what Sirius says too. I guess nearly losing everything makes you reconsider your choices. They paused before a spectacular flowering plant that changed colors as they watched, from deep purple to midnight blue to sparkling silver. This is new, Harry observed, momentarily distracted from tribunal thoughts. Lunar chameleon, Neville explained with evident enthusiasm. It adapts to magical signatures around it. See how it's turning silver? That's reflecting your goblin magic influence. Harry extended his hand curiously, and the plant's nearest blossoms shifted to a blend of silver and gold, the colors associated with his unique magical hybrid state. Beautiful, he murmured. I'm growing it for you, Neville said shyly. For your room at Gringotts. It should thrive in the magical atmosphere there. Touched by the gesture, Harry smiled at his friend. Thanks, Nevada. That's brilliant. As they continued their tour of the greenhouses, Harry found himself drawing strength from the normalcy of the moment, just two boys discussing plants and magic, temporarily free from the weight of politics and prophecy. Tomorrow would bring the tribunal and all its complications. Today, he could simply be Harry. The International Confederation of Wizards headquarters impressed even Harry, who had grown accustomed to Gringotts' grandeur. The Swiss facility combined magical and mundane architectural styles into something uniquely harmonious, soaring arches of glass and steel intertwined with ancient stone and living wood. The tribunal chamber itself reflected this fusion, with representatives from diverse magical traditions arranged in a perfect circle. There were no raised platforms or hierarchical seating, all participants met as equals beneath a domed ceiling enchanted to display the unified magical energies of those present. Harry entered with his guardians, dressed in formal robes that acknowledged both his wizard heritage and goblin guardianship. The silvery blue fabric was embroidered with subtle runes around the collar and cuffs, symbols of truth and reconciliation in multiple magical languages. Whispers followed their progress as they took their designated places. Though the tribunal was closed to the general public, representatives from major magical governments and species groups attended as observers. "Remember," Griphook murmured as they sat, "you speak only when directly addressed. This is primarily between Dumbledore and the Goblin Nation." Harry nodded, though he noticed many eyes fixed upon him rather than the official participants. His recent defeat of Death Eaters had elevated his already considerable fame to near-mythical status. Across the chamber sat Albus Dumbledore, looking simultaneously diminished and dignified in simple midnight blue robes. Gone were the twinkling stars and flamboyant accessories that had once characterized his appearance. This Dumbledore projected humility rather than power, a calculated choice, certainly, but perhaps also a genuine evolution. The proceedings began with a ritual cleansing of the space, representatives from 7 magical traditions casting purification spells to ensure truth would prevail over politics. The air shimmered as competing magical systems harmonized into a unified field. "We gather to resolve conflict between Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore and the Goblin Nation," announced Supreme Mugwump Babajid Akingbade, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "A declaration of war issued 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days ago upon discovery of severe negligence regarding the guardianship of Harry James Potter, last scion of House Potter." Director Ragnarok rose first, officially representing the Goblin Nation. With precise language, he recounted the discovery of Harry chained in a cupboard, the violations of the Potter will, and the subsequent declaration of war against Dumbledore personally. "Our action was measured," he concluded. "Not against wizard kind as a whole, but against one wizard whose arrogance endangered a child under our financial stewardship. Time has validated our concerns, as recent events demonstrate the continued threat to Harry Potter's welfare that might have been avoided with proper guardianship from the beginning." When Dumbledore's turn came, he rose slowly, his age suddenly apparent in his movements if not his magic, which remained formidable. "I stand before you," he began quietly, "not to defend my actions, but to acknowledge their fundamental flaws. When I placed Harry Potter with his Muggle relatives, I prioritized magical protection over emotional welfare. When I sealed his parents' will, I placed my judgment above their expressed wishes. When I failed to check on him, I demonstrated negligence unbecoming my positions of authority." Murmurs rippled through the chamber at this direct admission of fault. "The Goblin Nation acted correctly in declaring war upon discovering Harry's condition," Dumbledore continued, shocking many observers. "Their intervention likely saved his life and certainly his spirit. The subsequent shared guardianship between Sirius Black and account manager Griphook has produced results I could never have foreseen, a young wizard of remarkable capability, character, and cross-cultural understanding." He turned slightly to face Harry directly. "I cannot undo the harm my decisions caused you, Harry. I can only acknowledge them fully and submit myself to whatever justice this tribunal deems appropriate." The sincerity in his voice seemed genuine, catching Harry off guard. He had expected justifications or qualifications, not this complete acceptance of responsibility. After both primary parties had spoken, witnesses were called. Minerva McGonagall testified about her initial objections to Harry's placement with the Dursleys. Sirius Black described his wrongful imprisonment and the systematic way his rightful guardianship had been circumvented. Healer Thornfoot presented medical evidence of Harry's condition upon arrival at Gringotts. Finally, Supreme Mugwump Akingbade turned to Harry himself. "Young Mr. Potter, your perspective is central to these proceedings. Would you care to address the tribunal?" Harry rose, feeling every eye in the chamber upon him. At not quite 9 years old, he should have been intimidated by the august assembly. Instead, he felt oddly calm, centered in the knowledge of who he was and what he had experienced. 3 years ago, he began, his voice clear despite his youth, I didn't know magic existed. I thought my parents died in a car crash. I believed I deserved to live in a cupboard because I was a freak. The blunt statements caused visible discomfort among many observers. Today, I know my parents were heroes. I know I'm a wizard with Goblin Mysteries training. I know I have a godfather who loves me and a goblin guardian who respects me. I know I can defend myself against Death Eaters if necessary. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Professor Dumbledore made terrible mistakes with me. He thought he knew best about everything, and he didn't. But the goblins could have just reported what they found and moved on. They didn't. They decided I mattered enough to declare war over. Harry turned slightly to face Dumbledore directly. I was angry at you for a long time, he said simply. Sometimes I still am. But Griphook has taught me that justice isn't about punishment, it's about restoration. Making things right as much as possible. He addressed the wider tribunal again. I don't think continuing the war helps anyone now. Professor Dumbledore has lost positions and power. He's acknowledged his mistakes. And when the Death Eaters attacked Gringotts, he came to help without hesitation. Returning to his seat, Harry concluded, whatever you decide, I just want to move forward. I have a family now, an unusual one, but it works. That's what matters most to me. A profound silence followed his words. Even Supreme Mugwump Akingbade seemed momentarily at a loss for formal response. The tribunal recessed briefly to deliberate, though the outcome seemed increasingly clear based on the participants' testimonies. When they reconvened, Akingbade announced the terms for resolving the Goblin Declaration of War. Albus Dumbledore shall establish a permanent educational trust for cross-cultural magical studies, with particular emphasis on Goblin-Wizard cooperation. He shall deliver formal apologies in the Wizengamot, International Confederation of Wizards, and Gringotts Great Hall. He shall submit to a binding magical oath never to make unilateral decisions regarding Harry Potter's welfare again. The Supreme Mugwump turned to the Goblin delegation. In return, the Goblin Nation shall formally end their declaration of war and acknowledge Albus Dumbledore's efforts toward restitution. They shall permit limited, supervised educational consultation regarding Harry Potter's unique magical development as he approaches Hogwarts age. To Harry's surprise, both Dumbledore and Ragnarok accepted the terms without argument. More surprising still was the addendum Dumbledore himself proposed. I further request permission to offer specialized pre-Hogwarts instruction to Harry Potter and, if they wish, his close associates such as Neville Longbottom. Their unique magical development deserves recognition within the traditional educational system. After brief consultation with Griphook and Sirius, Harry nodded his acceptance of this arrangement. The formal resolution was sealed with ancient magic that bound all parties to their commitments, golden light briefly connecting Dumbledore, Ragnarok, and Harry in a triangular pattern before fading into the ambient magic of the chamber. As the tribunal concluded, Harry found himself face to face with Dumbledore for the first time in years, not across a battleground of competing interests, but simply as a young wizard and an old one. "Thank you, Harry," Dumbledore said softly. "Your capacity for reconciliation exceeds my own at your age. Perhaps at any age." Harry studied the elderly wizard thoughtfully. "Griphook says holding grudges costs you twice, once when the wrong happens, and again every day you stay angry about it. Your goblin guardian is very wise," Dumbledore acknowledged. "I hope, in time, you might allow me to contribute positively to your education. You have capabilities I've never witnessed in one so young." "We'll see," Harry replied, neither committing nor refusing. "I still have a lot to learn from both my guardians first." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly, a ghost of his former self. "Indeed you do. And I suspect they have much yet to learn from you as well." As they parted ways, Harry rejoined Sirius and Griphook, who had watched the exchange closely. "Well," Sirius said as they departed the ICW headquarters, "that's one for the history books. Goblin-Wizard War ended by 8-year-old diplomat." "Almost 9, Harry corrected automatically, drawing chuckles from both guardians. "How does it feel?" Griphook asked more seriously. The formal resolution after these years of conflict? Harry considered the question as they walked through the magically concealed entrance into non-magical Geneva. The summer sun warmed the cobblestone streets, and distant alpine peaks provided a dramatic backdrop to the city's elegant architecture. Like closing one book and opening another, he finally answered. The cupboard and the Dursleys feel like they happen to someone else now. But the Goblin declaration of war, that was the beginning of my real life. So it's strange to see it end. Not an ending, Griphook corrected gently. A transformation. The relationship between you and Dumbledore, between goblins and certain wizards, it evolves rather than disappears. And speaking of transformations, Sirius added with deliberate lightness, we should discuss your pre-Hogwarts education plans. If Dumbledore's offering specialized instruction, we should consider how to integrate that with your existing studies. And whether to include young Longbottom and potentially others, Griphook noted. Your unique magical development might be replicable to some degree with appropriate training methods. Harry smiled at their seamless transition into practical planning, so characteristic of both his guardians in their different ways. Sirius with his quick adaptability, Griphook with his strategic thinking. Can we discuss it over ice cream? He suggested hopefully. I saw a shop back on that plaza. Sirius laughed. Some things never change, magical tribunals or not. Yes, we can discuss your educational future over ice cream. A suitable celebration of successful diplomacy, Griphook agreed with surprising enthusiasm. I understand Swiss magical ice cream incorporates regional flavor enchantments not available elsewhere. As they made their way toward the plaza, Harry walked between his guardians with a sense of contentment that once would have seemed impossible. The path ahead remained uncertain, Voldemort's supporters still posed a threat, his unique magical abilities continued to develop in unpredictable ways, and Hogwarts loomed on the horizon with all its potential complications. But unlike the frightened child in the cupboard, he would face these challenges with preparation, support, and the absolute certainty that he belonged somewhere, in both the wizard and goblin worlds, a bridge between traditions that had remained separate for too long. So, Sirius asked as they approached the ice cream shop, what flavor represents successful magical diplomacy? Harry pretended to consider this seriously. Something unexpected that shouldn't work but does. Like, chocolate and pickle. Griphook made a sound suspiciously like a stifled laugh. Perhaps we should aim for slightly more conventional success. Goblin-wizard cooperation is revolutionary enough without culinary experiments. Boring, Harry declared with an exaggerated sigh. Next you'll say I can't use goblin metal magic to enhance my Hogwarts trunk when I get one. Actually, Griphook said thoughtfully, that might be an excellent practical application project. Combining wizard expansion charms with goblin metal enhancement techniques. As his guardians launched into a technical discussion of magical theory that would have baffled most adult wizards, Harry smiled to himself. This was his family, unusual, unprecedented, and absolutely perfect for who he had become. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity as families bid farewell to students departing on the Hogwarts Express. Among them stood a particularly unusual group, Sirius Black in elegant wizard robes, Griphook in a rare goblin-made suit designed for ventures into wizard society, and Harry Potter, now 11 years old and ready to begin his formal wizarding education. Remember, Griphook was saying, the weekly communication mirrors are goblin-crafted. They'll function within Hogwarts despite the anti-communication wards. And your trunk has all the special compartments we designed, Sirius added. Including the emergency port key chamber if you need to leave quickly. Harry nodded, having heard these reminders multiple times already. I'll be fine. Hogwarts is probably safer than anywhere except Gringotts now. Indeed, the past 2 years had seen significant security enhancements at the school. After the Death Eater attack on Gringotts and subsequent revelations about Voldemort resurrection attempts, Dumbledore had upgraded the castle's protections with input from both the Ministry and, surprisingly, goblin warding experts. There's Neville, Harry said, spotting his friend navigating through the crowd with Augusta Longbottom. And the Weasleys over there. The platform represented the culmination of years of preparation and change. Harry no longer resembled the malnourished child rescued from Privet Drive. Tall for his age, with the wiry strength that came from goblin combat training, he carried himself with quiet confidence rather than the frightened wariness of his early years. His education, too, had evolved in unprecedented ways. Following the Reconciliation Tribunal, he had indeed received specialized instruction from Hogwarts professors, including McGonagall and Flitwick, while continuing his goblin studies. Neville had joined many of these sessions, as had Ron Weasley and, occasionally, other children whose parents sought the advantages of early magical education. Potter, a cool voice interrupted his thoughts. Draco Malfoy stood nearby, his mother Narcissa maintaining careful distance from the unusual grouping of wizard, goblin, and boy who lived. Malfoy, Harry acknowledged neutrally. Their interactions during pre-Hogwarts ministry functions had been minimal but tense, given Lucius Malfoy's implication in the Death Eater attack and subsequent flight from Britain. "I see your unusual guardianship arrangement continues," Draco observed, eyeing Griphook with poorly concealed distaste. "It does," Harry confirmed pleasantly. "How's your father enjoying Albania?" "Still hiding from Aurors, last I heard." Draco's pale face flushed. "My father was framed. He'll be vindicated when he returns." "Of course he will," Harry agreed with exaggerated sincerity. "Just like I'm secretly a mermaid." Before Draco could respond, Sirius stepped forward. "Run along, young Malfoy. Your mother seems eager to depart now that she's fulfilled the obligation of delivering you to the train." Indeed, Narcissa Malfoy was already walking briskly toward the platform exit, having apparently discharged her parental duties with minimal investment. With a final glare, Draco stalked away toward a group of students that included several children of known Death Eater sympathizers. "That's going to be interesting," Harry murmured. "Sharing a school with Malfoy. Remember your training," Griphook advised. "Observe before engaging. Identify vulnerabilities. Strike only when advantage is clear." Sirius rolled his eyes. "Or, just try to enjoy school and make friends like a normal kid." "When has Harry ever been normal?" Neville asked cheerfully, joining their group. "That's what makes him interesting." Augusta Longbottom, who had followed her grandson, nodded approvingly at Harry. "Mr. Potter. I trust you're prepared for the academic challenges ahead." "As much as possible, Madam Longbottom," Harry replied politely. "Though I expect there will be surprises regardless." "Indeed," she agreed. "Hogwarts has a way of testing students beyond mere curriculum." The train whistle blew, signaling 5 minutes until departure. Around them, tearful goodbyes and last-minute advice reached crescendo volume as families prepared for separation. "Well," Harry said, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment, "I guess this is it." Sirius pulled him into a fierce hug. "Write often. Visit during holidays. And for Merlin's sake, have some fun between all the serious studying and goblin discipline." "I will," Harry promised, returning the embrace before turning to Griphook. Goblin culture didn't typically include physical demonstrations of affection, especially in public. But over the years, they had developed their own rituals. Harry extended his right arm, which Griphook clasped at the forearm in the traditional goblin warrior's farewell. "May your enemies fall before you recognize their threat," Griphook intoned formally. "And may your vaults overflow with treasures beyond gold," Harry completed the ritual response. Then, breaking with tradition, he quickly pulled his goblin guardian into a brief but heartfelt hug. "I'll miss you," he whispered. Griphook, after a moment of surprise, returned the gesture awkwardly. "And I you, Harry Potter." As the final whistle blew, Harry boarded the train with Neville, finding a compartment already occupied by Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, the latter a Muggleborn who had joined some of their pre-Hogwarts study sessions after displaying remarkable magical aptitude during early screening. From the window, Harry waved to his unusual family, wizard and goblin standing side by side on the platform, united in their commitment to the boy they had raised together. Behind them, Harry glimpsed a tall figure with a long silver beard, watching from a discreet distance. Dumbledore raised his hand in a small gesture of acknowledgement, which Harry returned after a moment's consideration. As the train pulled away, Harry settled back in his seat, surrounded by friends who had accepted his unique background and unusual magical education without reservation. "So," Ron asked eagerly, "do you think you'll be sorted into Gryffindor like your parents?" Harry shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe something different. The Goblin mysteries changed my magic in ways that might influence the sorting." "Fascinating," Hermione leaned forward. "I've read everything I could find about the sorting hat, but there's no mention of how it handles cross-cultural magical influences." "That's because no one like Harry has ever attended Hogwarts before," Neville pointed out. "He'll probably break the hat trying to sort him." They all laughed, including Harry. Whatever house the sorting hat chose for him, he knew his foundation was secure. The frightened child in the cupboard had become something unprecedented, not just the boy who lived, but a bridge between worlds, a wizard with goblin training, a symbol of what cooperation between magical traditions could achieve. As the Hogwarts Express carried him toward the next chapter of his life, Harry Potter watched the London suburbs give way to countryside and felt not fear but anticipation. He was ready for whatever challenges awaited, not because he was inherently special, but because he had been given what every child deserved: love, education, and the chance to become his best self. The cupboard was truly behind him now. Ahead lay Hogwarts, and beyond that, a future limited only by imagination rather than circumstance. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.